Well, guys, the clear winner of this vote for what we should look at today is definitely this video from Glitch Poachers called "The Never-Ending Spiral of iDubbbz and Anisa." Sorry, a little sick, low energy. My bad, everybody. Anyway, yeah, I'm curious. It's been a while since we've checked into them, and there's really nothing else to talk about, which is probably why this video was made in the first place, because I can't imagine there's anything like new or interesting about iDubbbz and Anisa. But yeah, let's get going. Let's get this party started.
That upsets me. I think that's one of the things that upsets me a little bit now about like some of the hate watchers or like old fans that haven't like moved on is like thinking that all of this is like by accident. Like my choices are just like, oh, a series of unfortunate events. And it's like, that's not what it is. It's like super intentional. Like I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
I need to be on a leash.
Creator Clash 2.
It looks nice.
It was a success. We lost $250,000 on the event.
Hey, listen, you call that a success in gambling? Only $250,000?
We did everything we could right. I know that you would.
I think their biggest problem is like responding to these, to like their, we'll say, detractors or whatever you want to call them. Like, why are you still talking about them? You know, I think it's time to just kind of move on. Stop talking about them. Stop giving them content to make, you know?
Cry if I said something to you in real life. I know you would cry. How do I
I don't think so, girl.
know? Because I've done it to one of you fuckers in real life, and you have cried.
What'd you say that could make somebody cry? Were they crying laughing?
You realize there are guys out there in private right now jacking off to your girlfriend. How
That's crazy.
am I the simp? How am I the simp? I was morally grandstanding. And
It's funny because for that one, it really doesn't matter. Like, his girlfriend decided to do OF, and it's like, it really, who cares? It really does not matter.
for anyone who liked those videos, I want this
I
video
mean, I wouldn't let my wife do it, but like, who gives a shit at the end of the day?
to be an example and a lesson for you. Let me just say, Anisa is just trying to exist.
And you even said that I made you feel like a bitch. And I'm glad that I did, to be honest. More people should do that to you. You want to get clipped. You want to get clipped. You want to get shared. Negative, positive, more often negative. It's kind of like when you go fishing and you go to a new...
Oh, this is a cope. This whole like, oh, you want to get positive or negative attention. No, you don't. Negative attention, like a consistent negative attention, just turns you into a lol cow. Like, yeah, sometimes negative attention can bring viewership and potentially give you an opportunity to even capitalize on that negative attention by maybe, I don't know, saying something that could change people's minds or something. But constant negative attention is not a positive thing. You don't want a constant negative attention, especially when you're interacting negatively with that negative attention. Like, they get so upset about it. Like, just move on. Just stop talking about this stuff. Like, all the cringe shit that these two are attached to, people will stop caring. Like I don't give a shit, even until you continuously keep going about it. You know, do something different. Like, make some other content and stop talking about your old stuff. Because if your entire content is like, hey, you know, I've changed, it's boring. It's over and over again. When you're going on to your, you know, new podcast or whatever, and you're having these constant episodes about your past, all you're doing is not moving on from your past. Move on from your past. Do something different. Commit to a new content strategy. Stop leaning into your old stuff. It's boring, you know? Like, do something new and different and interesting, you know?
lake, and you're like, I'm just gonna like throw out, I don't know, a grasshopper that I found on the ground and just a big old trout. I am unhinged.
Anisa is just trying to exist.
Base.
That sort of like flippant behavior, it makes me want to be violent. It makes me want to be very violent.
Oh, a series of unfortunate events. And it's like, that's not what it is. It's like super intentional. Like, I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to separate constructive criticism from hate sometimes.
He's right about that. That's actually like 100% true. Same here. One thing is like, as a content creator, I've been criticized before, probably more than others, you know, because I've been successful. I'm not saying other people aren't successful, but like, you know, TikTok, like, it's funny because my TikTok success was like a lot of views, but not necessarily a lot of money, right? So it's interesting how TikTok has kind of shifted some things. But, you know, when I'm in a controversy, every time I'm in a controversy, there's always valid criticisms for me. But because every criticism is so disproportionate, it's hard to separate the people being like reasonable versus people that are just like hating on you. You tend to like just kind of like categorize them all into the same thing, because you'll never be criticized for anything on the internet in a proportionate way. That's just how the internet works. And it takes you a while to kind of understand and realize that. And so when I do get criticism now, I usually don't respond to it because you need time to consider it. What is and isn't valid. It helps to have somebody in the real world to ground you and talk to you about it. Some of the more reasonable criticisms, you know. But it takes some time. So that's like fair. That's 100% fair and like true. And it can make it difficult because it's a lot of people, and I've been there too. You just write it all off as like, oh, people are just hating on you. Nobody like has any real argument. Everybody's just hating on you, blah blah blah, and all of a sudden you start discounting every single criticism, and that's not helpful for you as a content creator. But again, you know, Anisa and iDubbbz, you know, and I know it's cringe when I bring it up, but I'm wearing the shirt. I have my wife. She works a regular person job, so I'm able to ground myself through my wife. But when both of them are content creators online, like they don't have anybody to ground them. They're just sitting there in the same like terminally online sphere, constantly engaging with the bullshit, and they have nobody to be like, hey, this is stupid. You know that, right? So
Criticism isn't the easiest thing to navigate. There can be hostility, miscommunications, ego issues, and so on. Avoiding criticism in
hard cock
one way or another may be less painful in the short term, though if gone unchecked for too long, there are usually consequences. This video is about critique, defiance, failure, and the possibility of redemption. iDubbbz, also known as Ian, is a YouTuber most known for content copy.
I mean, the possibility for redemption is literally all, like, iDubbbz just has to make new content and move on. That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's time to just move on. It's time to make other content that's not like centralizing around your old stuff and constantly talking about your old stuff in an unproductive way. Stop apologizing for like the shit you did and do something else. That's it. And just try to make it successful by putting your energy into it.
A critical series on other controversial YouTubers, though his career has been through the ringer. It's been over a year since I've made a video about Ian or his lovely wife Anisa.
Has it been that long since he made a video about them? I'm surprised. I feel like I saw something from this guy recently. But you know what? I'm just obviously wrong. So
Things have only gotten worse for them since.
Yep, I am
The
wrong.
problems they were dealing with years ago are the same problems they continue to complain about today. Some may say that the mistakes that Ian has made are trivial. However, it's undeniable that he's lost a significant
Yeah, they are pretty trivial. It's his reaction with it that's like the bigger issue.
amount of viewership and respect as a content creator over the last few years. Whether or not you think he's largely responsible for his own downfall, a multi-million-dollar YouTube career has
Well, I think that really it comes down to like he feels like he made a mistake in his content, which is fair. Like he was a little too edgy. That's what he feels. And I've been there too. You know, for me, my a little too edgy was when some of my content wasn't like fun anymore, and some of it was hateful. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. Now I still make edgy content, but I'm not hateful about it, and I think people can see that. And it was a very brief period where I was like hateful with it, and that's a whole other conversation I have no interest in having. But like I haven't completely disavowed it, and iDubbbz over apologized for it. You know, and I think that probably comes from him not being a bad person. He's probably just like really torn up about it inside, which is fair. That's not like unreal. That's like not unreasonable to be like beat up over like, oh man, I've had a negative impact in some ways, you know. But I think he took it too far. You know, I remember when he did that podcast with that black woman, and she was like, oh, this other guy was a Jinxie or just a whatever. There's some other reactor. And he's like, you know, you went after this reactor, and like, there's so many other reactors. Why did you go after them? And she turned it into a race thing, and he like apologized for it. But it's like that guy didn't actually react. He just watched people's stuff and made stupid faces. It's like, so it's not the same as everybody else, and he over apologized for that too. So there's just a lot of different, you know. I think at this point he just needs to move on from like the constant chastising of himself. Do something else, man. Just do something else.
has been fumbled in one way or another. A recent podcast from Ian and Anisa tried
Because at first I feel like a lot of people, like myself included, I'm like, oh, I can respect the change. But then after, like, you know, a lot of it seems like it centralizes around how you've changed as a person. It's just like, oh, you're just jerking yourself off at a certain point. You know, I know it can be frustrating when people don't like see the change that you've feel like you've made. But at a certain point you have to be like, okay, time to move on. You know,
tries to make it seem like iDubbbz has started to figure things out and is about to right the ship of his brand and career.
You had come to that conclusion, I'm pretty sure, the last video that you put out. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, holy shit, he's figured it out. I was able to like bring it up to you like, okay, now go look at the Cheez-It video and like tell me.
Cheez-It video is such a great
If
example
you
of
could see
that.
the difference between this one and the Cheez-It video, and you watched it, and for the first time you're like, oh yeah, there it is.
what the fuck are they talking about?
But I'm not convinced that iDubbbz has started to get himself out of the hole he's found himself in. He established himself as one of the most critical YouTubers out there and turned out to be hypersensitive to criticism himself, to the point where he's willing to hold a grudge against his old audience for years.
Well, here's the thing that people gotta hear. A lot of you guys are very sensitive to criticism. You just haven't been checked yet. Like, people are much more sensitive to criticism than they think they will be because you're not getting criticism. Like, nobody really criticizes Glitch Poachers. He makes good content, but nobody Nobody cares enough to be like, oh, let me very not just criticize, but like let me do like criticize campaigns. Like at the end of the day, like iDubbbz, if he gets a criticism, it's not just somebody makes a video about it. It's everybody makes a video about it. Everybody talks about it on Twitter. Everybody talks about it on TikTok. Everybody talks about it on Instagram. That's changed a bit as he's lost some of his status. But it's very intense criticism. And so like people really, they like to think they interact with criticism well. But if you got the amount of hate that he's gotten, you probably wouldn't. I'm just saying, because again, I've been there. I probably haven't even gotten this much hate, but I've been there where I've interacted with it in less than stellar way. So I feel like some people think they understand what it's like to be criticized, but they really don't. At least not in this like intensive a way. So
we'll go over Ian's past controversies for people not as familiar with the iDubbbz saga, and I'll provide some fresh context from their more recent content along the way to shed some new light for those more familiar with his story. Before we get into the initial conflict between Ian and his audience, let's talk about this criticism issue a bit more, because one of the critiques he regularly gets is that he sucks at listening to it. This point has been made many times before, but it's still strange to see the guy known for his edgy takedowns of other YouTubers handle criticism and mockery so poorly.
Over the past year, maybe couple of years,
what's probably more likely for iDubbbz is that like he, I think that this is kind of like a boy thing. Men tend to be less empathetic to other people. I've been there. And so I think that as he's gotten older, he's gained more empathy. He's probably matured slower. And now he just has like a rush of feeling bad about some of the ways that he's impacted people with his content. And he probably just doesn't know how to deal with that. You know what I mean? Because I mean, again, I've been there too, where you're like, oh man, I didn't realize how this would have an impact on people. Yada yada yada. When you gain empathy, I think that's part of it too. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's just kind of annoying sometimes.
I've been ignoring a lot of feedback, I think, from the audience.
Well, it's been hard because you have, in some regards, been gaslit.
Oh my god.
Right.
Like,
it feels bad because I think I've been, for my own mental health, like ignoring that.
Yes.
For many YouTubers, not looking at the comments at all is an option. iDubbbz, however, has had a bad relationship with his audience for quite some time, and his viewership has been
That's one thing. I try not to look at comments too much anymore. It's not super productive necessarily. And it's when you get caught into this feedback loop of just responding to negative comments, which is also not helpful. You have people that are like, oh man, I really like your content, but you ignore them. But then the people that are like, oh, fuck you, you're like, oh, I gotta type a paragraph out. That's not exactly fair to the people who enjoy you and your content. So I try to keep the interactions just to the on-stream interactions, which is usually people who like me and they'll show up and talk to me. It's more productive. I still listen to criticism, but I don't make any, like, I don't express to people that, I don't even express to people when I've changed about things usually, or I've had a change of heart on something, because you can also get, there's so many feedback loops you can get caught into. If you get criticism and then you make a very big point to be like, I've changed of that criticism, especially if you make a video specifically about that, you're telling your audience that you're too open to change. I know it sounds so weird, but then all of a sudden people are like, well, I'm going to start criticizing you more because people get annoying about it. But when you listen to what people have to say, and then you're like, okay, let me take this into consideration and potentially change as time goes on, you're going to get more honest feedback rather than people just trying to like control your feedback, if that makes sense.
Declining for years, so understanding why people have issues with him is important. Ian has been defiant towards his fans for a while.
What it is, I think in general, is it's just me being flippant. Oh, the word is defiant.
Defiant.
I think I have a defiant streak.
Definitely.
Yeah. Like, it's one of the reasons that I did not want to work a normal job.
Yeah.
I hated being told what to do.
I mean, I don't mind working a normal job. They don't pay as well.
Yeah.
Even if it's like what's expected.
Isn't that pride a little bit? What is it specifically that you're talking about that I said that you're saying is pride?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having like pride or understanding your ego,
That is your most American trait.
Yeah. True.
Don't tell me what to do.
And it is this childlike defiance that is the essence of his failure.
I guess. I don't what?
This years-long streak of defiance started where you might guess, OnlyFans. In March of 2020, Ian's girlfriend, now wife, decided to start an OF account.
Yeah, and it really didn't matter. People crying about that were kind of just sensitive baby losers.
For this, Anisa would stream in a revealing way, so it wasn't too drastic of a career change for her. Still, both her and iDubbbz got a lot of backlash over this. Most people were just making fun of them, but there are some people who took it rather personally. Ian talked about this in his old response video.
A good amount of people are just doing the reasonable thing and just making jokes and laughing about it, but there's a whole nother another group of people who feel personally devastated and betrayed.
When I first saw this video when it came out, I didn't think much of it. I think having an OF girlfriend is whack, and so was Ian's response, but it didn't really affect my opinion of his content. Now I'm seeing it in a different light. It no longer comes off as a frustrated clarification. It comes off as vengeful and petty, sort of like, you, the audience, have upset me. Now I'm going to teach you a lesson about making fun of simps.
I disagree. I think that this is the dumbest controversy that iDubbbz has ever been in. Again, like, I wouldn't want my wife doing an OnlyFans, but, like, who gives a shit? The people who are going too far about it are, like, babies that are crying about this. Like, who gives a fuck at the end of the day? Like, it really didn't matter. Like, oh, his wife is fucking showing her... I don't even know if she's showing her pussy. I haven't looked at it. Surprisingly, you know, I usually, for research purposes... No, but all jokes aside, like... It doesn't matter. This is like this really, and like if he's a little angry and petty and being like, "Ah, fuck you," like I don't care either because people are being stupid about it. You're allowed to be angry and petty when other people are being angry and petty at you. I don't give a shit.
You think these f***ing retards
Whoa, you can't use that word, dude. That's mean.
would actually do a smidgen of research? This is straight out of the playbook of the boomer who's decaying in his lazy boy, who wants to tell you, no one's gonna hire you looking like that.
The internet is a forever archive, so there's no, I regret, delete all button. That's not quite there.
I don't know why this shitty point is being made. It's sort of like...
Well, the idea of like you doing OnlyFans content could potentially stop you from getting a job in the future. There might be a level of truth to that. Do I think it should? Probably not. In most jobs, you know, maybe, I mean, I don't even know, like maybe a school teacher, maybe. I mean, I don't really even care, honestly. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but... okay, yeah, who cares?
From 2003. By the way, the internet, it's a forever archive. Didn't know if you knew.
This aged horribly. Maybe Anisa doesn't care if her nude
Why does it age horribly?
pictures are shared without her permission, but a search for those photos on both Google and DuckDuckGo show free re-uploads of her material before her official OF page. Ian's
Do they really? Let me go look that up.
other points are about as bad, like how you should be okay with OF models because there are probably people who are jacking it to your girlfriend without her knowledge anyway.
I don't understand what's the big deal with him, like him just being like, yeah, I know these things are forever, who cares? I don't see how that's like a bad acknowledgement of criticism. I don't understand.
You should break up with her. But I'm cool with it. You do realize there are guys out there in private right now jacking off to your girlfriend. But I guess it's out of sight,
That's cool.
out of mind, it's not a problem.
I mean, I think there's probably a difference between somebody jacking off to my wife because they like her versus me making the content for them to jack off to. But again, I don't care. It's OnlyFans content. I don't give a shit. It's not a big deal.
And sure, there are a lot of gooners out there. The difference is that Anisa is actively encouraging those people to goon to her in order to make money and garner attention.
Okay, who cares? Why does that matter?
I'm pretty sure that's the part people have a problem with.
Yeah, but there's no reason to have a problem with that. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's just a stupid crybaby point.
But I digress. What about Ian's approach to this situation? He digs up tweets with no likes and no traction in order to make a point about the hate he's getting. It comes off as desperate to control public perception. iDubbbz had...
I don't think it's that meaningful. I think you're adding a lot to it. I think it's just him being annoyed and seeing a sentiment and being like, I want to respond to this sentiment. Is that sentiment being... Well, I mean, some of these sentiments are being echoed. Like, even this video seems to have a problem with his wife doing OnlyFans. Like, who cares? You know, it's kind of a... In my opinion, I think it's a little immature to give a fuck about people making OnlyFans content. That's me personally.
Had such a large audience, there was bound to be some hate thrown his way no matter what the controversy was. He decided to make a harsh and preachy response as a main channel upload. He chose to amplify the most aggressive comments towards him by reflecting their hostility. I mean...
Yeah, he did make a point to say that people that are just making fun of him then being silly about it, they're not a big deal. It's the people who take it too personally, so I don't really think that this is a big deal.
He's about as red as a stick of dynamite from Looney Tunes here. Those tweets had no traction.
Got 'em.
This was a video posted to a channel that regularly gets millions of views per video right after the OF controversy. Of course there was going to be further backlash. I bet a lot of his viewers at the time weren't even clued into what was happening, and then they were hit with this cherry red rage.
That's probably a good criticism. It's like people probably didn't even really care or know about this, and he almost Streisand affected it by talking about it as if it was like as meaningful, you know?
Grand scheme of things, this didn't do that much damage to the iDubbbz channel at the time. His videos were still getting millions of views afterwards. However, this did change Ian's attitude towards his audience.
You felt like the audience was like with you 100%, like they got it. And then I think this actually started during the OnlyFans thing where you all of a sudden saw that your audience was projecting a lot of things onto you, that you like had all these thoughts and feelings that you don't have. And I think it scared you of like, holy shit, these people don't know me at all.
Right.
A very big thing that has sort of altered my view.
That's interesting because that obviously can impact your content. Like I've been there before where I've had an audience that was probably more edgy than I am, and I didn't realize it, and it actually did kind of annoy me because people thought like I was legitimately like racist and stuff. Because I enjoy, let's say, more conservative leaning edgier jokes, whereas I'm more of a progressive leaning political person. And so for me to my change that I made on TikTok specifically is I just decided to make whatever commentary and joke I wanted, so that people can learn that I'm a little different than what you thought as time goes on, rather than make like a crusade against my followers kind of a thing, you know. You could just make different. That's one of the things. Like, just communicate to people through the making of your content. Because when people just see edgy jokes in their feed, they might think that you're a racist person. But when they start seeing an edgy joke, and then they're also seeing, like, you know, a video where you're doing a commentary on this, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, these two, and they just start to, you know, oh, wait a minute, and you start to generate a different audience, or your audience starts to educate themselves and change a little bit. You could just do that. So.
On all of this is just the amount of hate and harassment my wife Anisa has received over the years.
These are often Anisa's words, although Anisa is known to speak for Ian.
I have this problem where I talk for us.
Yeah.
I've always had that problem. And
She's doing it now.
I'm doing it now, but that's why I love that you're in therapy, because I think that
I'm getting better at it. Having no choice but to confront it head on, it's like really like, okay,
I can respect this, because that's how my wife and I are. Or rather, not even my wife and I. I have a big problem of, like, unintentionally steamrolling people, even in, like, relationships. Like, I think I know what's right. I'm pretty loud and boisterous, and I'm, like, confident in my decisions. And so I'll be like, we should do this. This is the best thing for us, blah, 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 blah. In past relationships, that sets you up for failure, you know? My wife basically stands up for herself. You know, like, I'll give you an example. A lot of the feedback I've been in with my exes is that, like, they have some pretty big struggle in their life, and I'm like, why don't you stop working for a while and I'll help you out? And they'll be like, oh, okay. And then that turns into, over time, like a resentment. You know, they start to get lazy, I start to get resentful, blah, 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 blah. And part of the problem is me. With my wife, I've said before, I'm like, you know, why don't you just quit your job? She's like, I'm not quitting my job. I'm not, like, we're not doing that. I'm not going to turn into, like, that situation. That's one example of a time she's like, no, we're not going to do this, you know? And so, like, I've been there too. I just am very fortunate to have a woman who will give me pushback. You know, if I go too far, or if I'm too fucking annoying, or if I get a little too attitudey, she'll snap at me. Or same way in reverse. So, like, yeah, that is, like, a real good thing to explore in a relationship. And that, like, but it, you know, comes down to iDubbbz has to stand up for himself more and give her shit and give her pushback. You know, like, you don't want to be, there's really, like, have you ever seen a couple where one person is kind of an asshole to the other person? They're, like, a little mean and, like, kind of rude, and, like, they'll give them shit for stuff. 50% of that person's problem is, like, the shitty partner, but 50% of the problem is also that partner not standing up for themselves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be like, don't talk to me like that. Don't treat me like that. I would say most times that person would be like, oh, sorry, because they're not, I don't think people mean to be a dick. And that's how I am with my wife. My wife's like, no. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Like, I make a lot of jokes in real life, and my wife will, like, check me. She doesn't embarrass me in front of people because she understands boundaries and she's great with that. But she might, like, tap my leg, give me a look, and then later on she'll be like, you got to take it down a notch with some of, like, your jokes, which is totally fair. Like, you know what I mean? You just have to be productive about it. Because that's the kind of guy I am. I'm a little intense, but I mean well, you know? So that's what I'm hearing from these two, which I think is totally normal and reasonable. And I think that that's a positive relationship dynamic. iDubbbz just seems to be more of a pushover, and he needs to nut up, and he needs to set better boundaries with his wife, which is something that you need to learn.
Anisa's not here. What do I say?
There is something to be said about Anisa speaking for Ian all of the time, but his
Hey, thank you for the $5 from Jack Esposito. iDubbbz over-apologizing is cringe as Macklemore apologizing to K-Dot. I don't know the lore, but okay. His all or none philosophy is flawed. Great content, but sometimes too edgy. 505. Thank you so much, brother. I love you.
defiance and resentment towards his own audience would explain a lot in the story of his career. The people who took things oddly personally were a vocal minority, and that's who iDubbbz chose to focus on. Couple this with how sensitive Ian is to criticism and mockery, and things start to fall into place.
For every 20 positive comments, the one comment holds about as much as power as the 20 negative ones. And
I mean, this is... him admitting this is very mature. Just to be clear, the stuff that you're showing from iDubbbz is actually, it's him being mature and like, yeah, I know it's a problem that I overly focus on negative comments. We've all been there as content creators, especially who have been in controversies before. So this is actually a pretty Very mature take from iDubbbz, just to be clear. I still think he probably should stop consistently talking about it, but this is still a very mature take from him.
Positive ones. Even if it's just one day or a small controversy, it's so much worse than like a legacy or multiple years of doing well, doing pretty good.
This is a bit much, but it is a common problem that people have, focusing too much on the negative. Sometimes a bad remark can stick with us for longer than we would expect, and I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. But when you're a YouTuber, a highly critical commentary channel, getting negative comments is a natural part of the process, especially during a controversy. Looking for tweets with no traction to highlight the kind of hate you're getting is basically an invitation for more people to start dunking on you.
Yeah, that's what he's referring to in that podcast. It sounds like he's acknowledging this problem, you know?
This was a pretty bad way to approach the OF situation, and it still seems...
I still think that the OF thing isn't that big of a deal. I think he approached it fine. He just needs to move on and make better content. I think the biggest problem with iDubbbz is his content's not good right now. That's it. Like, that's pretty much all it is. Obviously, it has the capacity to be good, but he hasn't really found himself. And part of that's probably because he doesn't need to, because he's rich. You know, so but that's part of the issue, is he hasn't rebranded particularly well yet.
To bother him to this day, but for about 2 years after Ian's response video, he was relatively controversy-free. He never made another content cop, but his uploads were satisfactory, for the most part. They weren't anything special, and the iDubbbz channel at one point did feel special. He released his Dax Flame documentary during this time, and out of the 3 documentaries he did, the others on Airsoft Fatty and Sam Hyde, I think the one on Dax Flame was the weakest.
That Sam Hyde one was crazy, bro. Because I watched a clip the other day, something along the lines of like, he's like, I was trying to get you, like to Sam Hyde, he was trying to fuck with him, but then Sam Hyde just fucked with him first. And I'm not a particular fan of Sam Hyde, but you know, you can't try to fuck with this guy because you're annoyed with him and then get upset when he just does it to you back to you better, you know?
A bad video, but relatively forgettable. He also wasn't uploading as much during this 2-year span. While it wasn't obvious to everyone at this point, Ian still held on to his resentment over the OF kerfuffle. With his next documentary, however, more people would start to look at iDubbbz differently. So, the Sam Hyde arc. We'll learn a bit more about Sam as we revisit this. All that's important for now is that he's a controversial comedian, and that's probably putting it lightly.
Definitely putting it lightly, for sure.
iDubbbz made a documentary about him titled Getting Away With It. It was another video that would be divisive for the iDubbbz audience. Entertainment-wise, this was some of the best stuff ever put on his channel. He went through various odd and questionable aspects of Sam's life, only for Sam to reveal that it was all for show.
I'm curious
Yeah, I mean, he got God on that one.
about your relationship with Danny. Has she been on drugs since she met you?
She's been on drugs since before she met me. So if you're implying that I've driven her to drug use, you are incorrect.
Okay. Have you tried to get her any help?
No, seeing as she's a girl I paid $500 to shave her head and pretend to be my girlfriend, no, I haven't tried to get her any help. Also, I think I told her to
Okay.
put her hand in your pocket and pretend to be on drugs. You know,
This is so upsetting to me right now.
you think I'm a millionaire? You think I have a shit-ass office like this?
Shut up. This is your office.
Says who? Also, the slingshot's a rental.
There are a lot of details to the story behind this documentary, but the main question is, what were Ian's intentions with his documentary on Sam? Was it meant to be a hit piece to make Sam look bad, or did he have a more pure motive in mind? Let's look at the points for both sides of this old debate. Sam and Ian's...
I don't know if it was meant to be a hit. I mean, I forgot, like, I wish I saved though, because I watched it the other day. It really did communicate that iDubbbz was going in there to try to, like, I don't know if embarrass him or to like play a prank on him or something. I don't know.
First interaction was years before this came out, and it was a negative one. I guess Sam was making some kind of pony game as a joke, but didn't want people to know it was a joke.
Yes, and I think that iDubbbz maintained some resentment over the pony game thing.
Or something like that. Ian made a video about it, addressing it like a real product because he wasn't in on the joke. Sam issued a copyright claim.
There were some creators at the time who made videos about this fake pony project.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Were you one of them?
I was one of them.
What did I do?
You copyright claimed the video.
I was trying to not have that ruse get blown, though.
Right.
So maybe
Which is probably an abuse of the copyright system, let's be real.
that had something to do with it.
That probably did.
First, let's address the copyright claim. I don't agree with it, even if it was an attempt to preserve the humor of what Sam was doing. Copyright claims are whack and should be reserved for egregious situations only.
Yeah, I mean, that's an abuse of the copyright system.
However, this was years ago, and it seems like Ian has been holding on to a grudge against Sam ever since.
Yes, that's also a problem.
After all, he says that's the reason why he's there.
That's what led to this day today.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I can get why if he typically makes like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars per video after putting in so much work. Getting a false copyright claim could definitely, you know, put you in a frustrating spot.
So are you gonna punk me?
You're getting punked.
Really? How are you gonna punk me?
I'm gonna make you look like an asshole.
Really?
Which isn't hard to do.
Well, I think this is a clip I saw the other day. I wonder if I saw this clip because of this video coming out. No, video's only a day old. I saw that clip maybe a week ago. I mean, that really makes you look bad, man. It really makes you look bad.
Is that really the case?
No.
It almost comes across like he's saying,
Oh. it sounds like he says no, but he sounded like actually angry about it.
You brought this upon yourself. The counter to this is, well, Ian was just breaking the ice. Bringing up their first interaction isn't strange at all. It goes deeper than that, and if you have any social skills at all, you can tell that iDubbbz is taking a combative and antagonistic approach during much of the interview.
I mean, even that interview seemed pretty combative, so sure, I agree.
Did I create an enemy with that?
I mean, for a period.
Damn,
I didn't like you.
I'm sorry.
You were an asshole.
I'm sorry, buddy. That's no good.
Yeah, why'd you do that to me?
Then there's the timing of the release of
I like he said for a period, and then he's clearly still affected by it now, you know?
the doc. Sam had his own crew there, and they were able to get enough of their own footage to make their own cut. He was suspicious of Ian's intentions from the first email.
I knew from the get-go that he was coming
I mean, he seems to have been right.
out here to make me look bad. I knew from the first email what it was because he'd been getting a lot of shit from like 4chan right-wing type guys because of his OnlyFans girlfriend. He's gonna make me look bad so that he can like get one over on the people that have been trolling him for having a OnlyFans girlfriend.
Oh, I mean, maybe that may be true. I don't know if that's necessarily true. It might be more he just wants to get one over on Sam Hyde because he's angry at Sam Hyde for making him feel stupid. And then also, you know, falsely copyright striking his shit. I don't know if he's ever was able to resolve that false copyright strike.
So it makes sense that he would want his own footage. Sam claims there was 9 months without any communication or any sign that the documentary would actually come out at this point.
It's not to make iDubbbz look stupid or anything, or like do anything like, oh, burn, we took your documentary footage and released it first, dude. No, it's just like we spent $15,000 on this.
Yeah.
We took 9 months to make, or it's been 9 months and there's no communication, and we spent 2 weeks of time. That's what I'm more worried about. So
Because the filming didn't go how Ian had planned and Sam stole the show with his antics, he believed that iDubbbz wasn't going to release the documentary at all, so he released
Probably he wasn't going to.
his own version, which implied some of his concerns about iDubbbz trying to snake him. Let's back up for a second though, because the iDubbbz camp also claims there was no communication.
Sam did not communicate at all
Yeah.
with Ian about that, so that was obviously a tactic, probably.
Probably.
On this one, I believe Sam. There's footage of him calling Ian. He talks about how he feels like he may have tried to communicate too much.
I think I probably kind of like overwhelmed him. He was on Twitter. He was on Twitter trying to line up fights with people, and I was like, "Yo, can you get me in there? Let me get a fight with Fantano." And I think I bothered him too much, something like that. I wasn't like an asshole or anything, but I think I probably just texted him too many times.
And iDubbbz as well as Anisa have both talked about their terrible communication skills.
You ask any of our fighters, and it's like, yeah, Anisa was the one who like solves problems. She is more communicative than me.
He leans too much onto his wife. I think this is like the fundamental problem, like where people, and I think a lot of people just are annoyed with Ian for being a pushover. It's okay to have a partner that does things for you, but it seems like from what we're seeing, iDubbbz seems to just be fundamentally incapable of doing anything without his wife. And I have a dependency on my wife too. I love her, and my wife has a dependency on me. But I don't know if I necessarily see the dependency in the opposite direction. Like I'm not seeing where like, you know, she necessarily is as incapable as you are. You seem to be very incapable of existing without her, but she seems to be able to exist without you. And I think that this is, you know, for me at least, it's one of like my, I guess, criticisms of him. It's like, why are you that incapable? You know, like you're running a business. You don't get to be like, well, I'm just bad at things. It's like, okay, well, that's cool, but you need something not to fuck up.
And she's better at communicating than I am. I f***ing suck at this shit.
I'm fully tattooed, right? Can't make a phone call. You phone me, I'm not picking that shit up. I'm hiding from my phone.
Anisa is
Well, this is probably more of like a one-on-one friend thing.
the one. She is the one to talk to.
Ian does all the phone stuff,
What the fuck? Okay.
to be honest.
Sam comes across as the kind of person who would be responding and reaching out to the person he just collaborated with for a week to make sure the project is still making progress. iDubbbz comes across as the kind of person who has a panic attack whenever the doorbell rings. Alright, back to the timing of the release. The iDubbbz version came out a month after Sam's. This caused a lot of people to think that iDubbbz only released his version as a response, and
Probably.
that if Sam never uploaded his version, Ian's cut wouldn't have come out either. That
Probably.
Ian wasn't able to make the hit piece on Sam he wanted and planned on scrapping the project altogether, only for Sam to release his version.
He probably should have just planned for like a non-hit piece version of it if he was trying to make a hit piece. I mean, was it supposed to explicitly be a hit piece? Maybe. It might have also just been like kind of like a light rib to feel like he's got him back a little bit. I don't really know. I don't remember the video he released specifically. I think I watched it a while ago, but I don't really necessarily remember it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a hit piece. It might have just been more of like a haha, let me get you back a little bit, kind of like a fuck you, because he's still obviously feeling some type of way about it.
The iDubbbz camp has recently denied this, attributing the delay to their editor's procrastination, saying that the documentary was almost done by the time Sam uploaded.
I'm like a chronic procrastinator. I just put it off for too long, I do that
Why would you let him do that?
with a lot of things, my own work included.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ian does too. I do as well. And I think that's the problem is all three of us, none of us set deadlines
Nope.
for ourselves or each other.
This is Dane, by the way. We'll see him again a bit later
Is she older and took his virginity? Interesting.
on. Even if procrastination is the sole reason why it came out so late, which I have my doubts on, that doesn't mean Ian's intentions were pure from the start. It just means that he wasn't planning on scrapping the project and has a lazy editor. Of course, there's also the documentary itself. Watching it again for the first time in a while, I was surprised by how much of the video is spent criticizing Sam. And I get it, Sam Hyde is a controversial figure, so talking about that in a documentary
Well, he is an extraordinarily controversial figure. Let's be real. It's you can't really undersell that one.
about him is natural. However, this is more than just a documentary. It's a pretty massive critique of Sam and his work, and it's clear Ian is trying to make a point.
I mean, maybe his point is correct. I don't remember the video, but considering how much baggage Sam Hyde has, like, it doesn't necessarily, you know, making a criticism isn't a bad thing necessarily. So
A lot of Sam's comedy seems to be rooted in him trying to rile people up. But if you're not saying anything about something when you say it, why do you even say it?
So with the context that Sam openly aligns himself with the alt-right and white and misogynistic stuff, it's hard to write off
that does seem to be true, yeah.
any of the ironic stuff is just ironic. That's the disconnect that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they'll see people, Sam saying based and red-pilled ironically in videos.
Yeah.
And then they'll go in the comments and they'll, you know, have a rant about how based and red-pilled they are. There have been many infamous Sam Hyde moments where he tries to harass or get the attention of people like Ethan Klein or Lena Dunham. I was just joking. Is a
Lena Dunham's annoying as shit.
or get the attention
Fat pig to Lena Dunham. Sorry. Lena Dunham's a fucking weirdo, so.
of people like Ethan Klein or Lena Dunham. I was just joking is a legitimate way to exonerate yourself in moments of actual miscommunication. But it's also a perfect fallback option for when you receive criticism for a point that you're genuinely trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. You know, people use jokes as a vehicle to communicate things. Sometimes you are just joking. Sometimes you're trying to push a particular message. So, sure. Okay.
I think eating shit is awesome. What the? You like eating shit? I was just kidding. Are you stupid or something? Well, now I feel bad for being unaware of any irony going on. So in the future, I will not criticize you for anything you say. I am now invulnerable to criticism.
So when he says this is not intended to be a hit piece,
Yeah, the video is not meant to be a hit piece.
it's hard to believe, especially with the context outside.
Well, I mean, what is a hit piece? You know, the way I'm going to look up exactly what it means. The way I would say a hit piece is something that is supposed to have a dishonest representation of the person in order to, like, hit them. You know, I think there's a difference between a hit piece and, like, a criticism piece. So, again, it's been a while since I watched it. I can't tell you for sure. It might have just been a critical piece. It might have been, like, something that was meant to say, like, hey, these are the issues that I have with him. I would say a hit piece goes into the territory when you start to say dishonest things or you have a dishonest framing of what the person does. Right? That's how I interpret hit piece. So it might have been a hit piece, or it might have just been like a critical video on Sam Hyde that he deserves. I don't really know, but that's how I would say those two things are different.
Side of the doc. People may disagree on the definition of hit piece, but it's undeniable that his video is highly critical of Sam and his approach to comedy. That's fine,
Sure.
Criticize whoever, just don't lie about your intentions. I believe people wouldn't have had as much of a problem with this video if Ian was more forthcoming about his problems with Sam.
Maybe.
Instead, he lies about his intentions, saying that it wasn't meant to be a hit piece and he wasn't trying to make Sam look like
Well, it may not have been a hit piece, just to be clear.
an asshole, only to conclude the video by calling Sam an asshole.
I'm gonna make you look like an asshole.
Really?
Which isn't hard to do.
Is that the real?
That probably hurts him a lot. Because that does communicate that it's a hit piece if you're trying to make him look like an asshole.
The case?
No.
As far as who is Sam and what is he about, it seems like he really likes comedy, even if that means being an asshole to people. This idea of confusing people and never being genuine or only being genuine when you think it's obvious is a great game to play when the most important thing to you is never showing your taint to people. You can feel like a winner in a game that only you are playing.
There was a lot to take in regarding the Sam Hyde documentary and its creation, but I think this particular difference between Sam and Ian is worth highlighting. In the last few years or so, iDubbbz has made a big effort to be more concerned about the influence and impact of his work. In my
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
last video, I talked about art, expression, and influence using this diagram. The point I was making was that some people become more concerned with the impact or influence of a piece of art rather than the art itself, which I think can lead to some problems. The problem
Well, it's good to be aware of the impact that your content has.
that I see for iDubbbz is that his concern with his influence is probably messing with his ability to express himself. When someone as controversial as Sam
Probably. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You know, he feels like he can't be edgy at all because he thinks that everybody will interpret it incorrectly. But I think this is probably the best time that I've ever seen where people are accepting of edgy humor without thinking that it's horrible. We got very sensitive in 2020, understandably so, but to the point where anybody that might have been edgy was seen as somebody who's like a fundamentally bad person. And I think part of that is because there are people who were being edgy that were fundamentally bad people trying to use humor as some kind of a mask. So it's understandable to think that. However, I really think that with and this is going to sound maybe silly, but with Shane Gillis hitting popularity and like Theo Von, I think that everything shifted. I think that things have shifted pretty reasonably towards people being more accepting of edgy humor and not thinking that the person making it is a bad person. Because I've noticed with their they're rising up, the atmosphere has been easier for me to navigate into and make edgy jokes and still do my like commentary that tends to again be more left leaning and like be reasonable without getting like an insane amount of backlash. And I'm specifically again talking about TikTok. That's my most like viewed platform, we'll say. So like, this is the best time now to do it. That seems to be going pretty well for people. Just got to maintain that energy. Right.
Sam Hyde tells Ian that he doesn't really care or think about how people interpret
this interview with this kid was fucking weird. I didn't watch the whole thing, but apparently Sam hired like 20 Indian people to show up there and just do everything he said. It was so fucking weird.
His work, I think that annoys him.
Like, can I not give a fuck about that at all?
I mean, obviously you can.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be flippant or like dismissive of your question. I just no, it's not something I think about.
Something that you think you should think about?
No. It's not.
The more iDubbbz tries to manage his image and tell his audience how to view his past work, the more hate he gets. Sam Hyde, on the other hand, seems to be doing better than ever, and without concern for how people may or may not interpret the messaging of his comedy. Whether you'd call this a hit piece or not, it's clear the video is designed to be a significant criticism of Sam Hyde, an explanation as to why he was at a low point, justifiably blacklisted. These are the reasons why people think iDubbbz was being deceptive when he said this wasn't meant to be a hit piece. Before we move on, there's one more thing worth mentioning, the Puppet Master comment.
Again, I don't necessarily, it doesn't really matter that much. Sam Hyde isn't a particularly good person, so I mean, it is what it is.
Sam Hyde has said on both PKA and in his interview with Brandon Buckingham that iDubbbz made a certain remark.
But at one point, he said at the tail end of the documentary, when he wasn't getting the footage that he wanted, he was really upset, like an angry child. Like he was pouting in his car and shit. And he said, not to me, but to somebody on the crew, he said, usually I'm the puppet master in these situations.
What?
Yeah. He said 100% on God, he said that. He even said to one of my crew members,
I mean, he might have said that. He might have meant it more menacingly, or he might have just meant it as like an offhanded comment.
Overheard him saying during the shoot.
I imagine if he meant it menacingly, he probably wouldn't have said it to Sam Hyde's crew. But okay.
He said, I'm usually the puppet master in these types of situations. Which is just like, it's just like a mentally sick thing to say.
Are you serious? Yeah.
Yes.
He said, I'm usually the puppet man. That's like a sociopathic way to see the world.
This was
I mean, I don't think it's that deep, but maybe.
Something that a lot of people were talking about. After all of this time, Ian has finally denied this claim.
Because of the puppet master
thing.
Comment.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Which, by the way, for the people watching who don't understand that reference, it's just like a complete lie made up by, I guess, people who are watching all of the Sam Hyde content.
It took him a suspiciously long time to address it, more than 2 years after the fact. I can't say for sure who was...
He probably should have addressed that a little sooner. But I think a big part of him was trying not to like even interact with Sam Hyde because they had a bit of a beef. So, well, quite a bit of a beef.
Telling the truth, but personally, I believe he said that. As we'll continue to see, iDubbbz is at the very...
I mean, there's a lot more to this iDubbbz and Anisa thing. Oop, I thought I paused. Like, I'm pretty sure... like Sam Hyde, or excuse me, iDubbbz and Anisa, Sam Hyde. Like Sam Hyde was going on like a campaign, just constantly mocking and criticizing, specifically Anisa, and like being very disparaging of her. So obviously, you're not going to want to interact with somebody who's constantly speaking very negatively about your wife. So I think that's something to keep in mind for context of the situation.
Very least, diluted to an extent. There's also the other side to this. If Sam Hyde is the one lying here and just making stuff up to make iDubbbz look bad, that changes a lot and makes Ian look much more sympathetic. That is a possibility. Although Ian is the one who is still vindictive, and Sam is hoping that Ian will redeem himself.
And if you could say anything to iDubbbz about this Froggy Fresh banning situation, what would you say to him?
Stop being a silly Billy and get on your redemption arc.
No, yeah, like with the iDubbbz Froggy Fresh thing, I understand why he pretty much blacklisted the guy from it. Like, here's the thing, and I think it's reasonable. I mean, the reality here is that you're trying to build a legitimate brand. Whether you like Sam Hyde or not, you know that he's effectively going to be a cancer to whatever plot thing you're trying to do. If you have him heavily associate... What? Me? If you're trying to have him heavily associate with your brand, it's going to have a negative impact on your brand. It's going to make it more difficult. It's going to make it less successful from a mainstream perspective. And so you not being aware of that, I mean, it's just kind of your ignorance. So him not wanting to have somebody that's associating with Sam Hyde when he's doing like a huge charity of like events that he wants to be successful, it's not unreasonable. That's just the reality. You might like Sam and that's fine, but you know that he's not going to be good. And somebody who is trying to do like a charity event, a boxing charity event, they obviously are not going to be able to have that person attached to their brand in any capacity. So that's just the reality. So yeah, I mean, I generally agree with what the decision that they made. It's not just about the one person who wants to work with Sam Hyde. It's about the success of the entire, event. And if you thought the event was unsuccessful, it would have been less successful if they had allowed themselves to associate with Sam Hyde. Like you have to understand that. So,
what's your relationship like with iDubbbz nowadays?
I think that everybody deserves a chance at redemption.
You think he deserves one?
Yes.
But isn't he? What's the issue with him?
I don't have an issue with him.
So why would he need redemption in the first place?
Well, have you seen him lately?
I don't keep up with him. I heard that his girlfriend cheated on him or something.
Well, check him out because he needs redemption.
To be honest, that documentary probably should have been a hit piece now that I know how it all ended up.
Yeah.
It's
True.
So I believe Sam, although it is a he said, she said kind of thing.
I wouldn't doubt that iDubbbz said that Puppet Master comment. I don't know if he meant it in a particularly malicious way, but I wouldn't doubt that he actually said that.
Overall, I think it's clear that Ian was looking for a win while Sam wanted to put on a show. That's why
I do think this seems to be like where we're going to end. I don't know how much we're going to talk about Sam Hyde in this, but I think it is fair to say again, like Sam Hyde was almost obsessive when it came to iDubbbz and like harassing him and his wife and like disparaging his wife. And again, like as a man, you're not supposed to attack other people's wives. So I get it.
a good chunk of people started to look at iDubbbz differently at this point. Let's go back a clip.
To be honest, that documentary probably should have been a hit piece.
This is a recent clip about the Sam Hyde documentary, and it shows us a few things. First, Ian has convinced himself that his video on Sam doesn't qualify as highly critical or a hit piece. If that's truly how he feels,
well, those are two different things, just to be clear. Highly critical isn't necessarily a hit piece, in my opinion. So
that's delusional. He was trying to use Sam to make a point, not put on a show. Second, that he still holds a grudge against Sam, probably thinking he's responsible for the collapse of iDubbbz Incorporated. That's
I don't know if that's why. I think it's because he was very toxic towards his wife. I don't think it's reasonable to just decide why. Kind of have to, but okay.
Delusional as well. Third, it shows some.
You have to show me, and maybe you could. You'd have to show me where iDubbbz is being more explicitly blaming Sam Hyde for the downfall of his career, rather than being more of a focus on him being disrespectful towards his wife publicly in a very aggressive way.
Regret for taking us off their approach to making videos. Now that part makes sense to me. As eager as some may be to convince you otherwise, there's nothing to be gained from losing your edge. Impotence is not a virtue. Only a few months after the documentary came out, iDubbbz would run and participate in his YouTuber boxing event, Creator Clash.
What?
A few months after the documentary came out, iDubbbz would run and participate in his YouTuber boxing event.
Run in and participate. Okay, gotcha.
Creator Clash. It was an overall success. They had top-notch production, a great venue, some notable e-celebs ready to fight each other, all for a good cause, charity. The only common complaint about the first Creator Clash was that Ian banned Sam Hyde from attending the event whatsoever.
Yeah, and it makes sense because it would have been a negative, for the event. It would have reduced specifically advertiser confidence, which you need in order to run the event.
Given the context of the situation, it really rubbed some people the wrong way, myself included.
Well, you're not. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's if you don't understand why he did it, then you just don't seem to be too business. It's not even about being deeply business oriented. Talk about the person who's blacklisted from working at Adult Swim, and you can't understand why this might not be somebody who's good for a charity event from any. I don't really understand that.
First, there's the recent documentary. It looked like iDubbbz reached out to Sam just to try and smear him, only for Sam to disarm things in an entertaining way. There was plenty of room for amicability after the fact, but iDubbbz had no intention to mend fences. This makes him come off as bitter and sour that he wasn't able to punk Sam the way he wanted. Then there's the fact that Sam helped train one of the fighters on the Creator Clash card, Harley from Epic Mealtime. Not allowing a trainer to be there for their fighter doesn't feel right, although
Given the circumstance, I think it's fine.
I'm not familiar with boxing culture whatsoever. Lastly, and I think for many people this was the most important thing, it was a charity event that Sam paid more than $10K to in order to attend, only for Ian to ban him at the last second after he already bought plane tickets.
Okay. Again, there is a ton of build up to this where he's being consistently disrespectful to his wife. Like it's obvious that he was going to show up to try to take over part of the event. Because I remember he was like getting ready to sell merch and like wear, I forget exactly what it was, like, but he was there to troll the event. Like that's pretty. I mean, we have to understand that, and I think that if you're a Sam Hyde fan, you wanted to see that. So he was going to show up to troll the event. Like, it wouldn't have been good for the event itself. It wouldn't have been positive publicity for the event.
No, I didn't think I was going to be on the card, but I didn't realize at any point that I was going to be blacklisted from a charity event. I got 5 front row tickets. It was $10,000, and it's for charity. And supposedly, I'm going to be refunded this money. So I guess he wants me not around badly enough that it's worth taking away $10,000 from charity.
Yeah, I mean, you could, first of all, still give money to the charity if you wanted to. But then second of all, like, it could cost the venue, the events, more than that in the future by, again, reducing confidence. It doesn't take a lot. Like, we saw like, what is it called? What happened? Like, the whole adpocalypse thing on YouTube, where there was some really edgy ads running on, like, a couple of things, on a couple of videos. Or, excuse me, there were the ads running on some, like, really edgy videos. And then a mass exodus of advertisers. Like, we know that there can be a tremendous, significant impact if advertiser confidence is reduced, which could massively hurt the event and massively hurt a second event and orchestration to donate more to charity in the future. So
he was going to wait until I was in Tampa to spring that news on me.
We bargained enough to where we got in. Unfortunately, we tried nonstop to get Sam in. But it wouldn't work.
If Ian simply didn't want Sam to fight at the event, that's fine. I understand he's a controversial figure and they're trying to raise money through sponsors. But turning down money for charity at the last second in order to ban the person you were recently trying to pull one over on is one of the worst PR decisions I know of.
Not really. I don't think anybody in the real world, like outside of commentary, would ever think it's a bad move to do. It was pretty clear that Sam was there to troll the event, or wanted to go there to troll the event. They knew that there was bad blood. Like, his gamble of trying to get there and troll the event didn't work out. That's I don't know what else to tell you. It's really not as deep as you want it to be.
There will be more. There are going to be some people who disagree with this framing of things, so let's address the main counter-argument, that Sam Hyde is a dangerous troll who would have sabotaged the event.
I think he was there, he was going to try to, like, sell weird Sam Hyde merch. He probably would try to sabotage the event. Because it would have been funny. Like, at the end of the day, it would have been funny. Like, I'm not a huge Sam Hyde fan, but him showing up, he would have sabotaged the event, and it was going to be something that we would all laugh at whether we wanted to or not. It's just the reality of the situation. So, yes, we already know that we know that for a fact. Like, we know that was a pretty reasonable assumption to make.
I get why there would be this concern. Sam can be chaotic and disruptive. It's kind of what he's known for. Yeah. No one can say for sure how things would have played out if he was allowed at the first creator clash, even though I think he would have been respectful.
I doubt it. I don't think that there's any reason to think so. That's his whole kind of brand, is to be fucking crazy.
With that said, Ian should have allowed him to attend.
No, disagree. I don't think it would have been good, but you can think whatever you want to think.
Sam truly was planning on sabotaging the event, he would have made a complete fool of himself, proving Ian right.
Doubtful.
Right about him. The reputation of iDubbbz and Creator Clash would not have been affected because the blame would have fallen on Sam, not the charity event. Then
it's not how it works. It's just not how it's going to work. Like, you're looking at this as a commentary content creator from YouTube. You have to look at this as from, like, this creator event was outside of that sphere. There was also, like, a more mainstream sphere. So, like, yeah, maybe inside of that creator sphere, people would have been like, "Oh, Sam Hyde looks like an asshole," or you probably would have thought it was funny. You're full of shit. But then outside of that, what the mainstream goes is like, okay, this person that has a history of being problematic was let into the venue and it had a negative impact. We're not going to sponsor this next year's event. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Then Ian actually would have had a reason to ban him from future events, and people would have been far more understanding. If Sam
he made the right decision. It was a smart business move.
Sam wasn't planning on sabotage and instead wanted to bury the hatchet, which...
Yeah, wasn't Sam bringing a group of friends just to wear Sam Hyde merch and troll? Yeah, of course. Like, yeah, that's the whole thing. Again, it probably would have been funny, but it would have created a less interesting, or excuse me, it would have created a less successful event.
Seemed to be the case, that could have been a wholesome moment. The only situation where iDubbbz was guaranteed to look bad is the one where he turns down money for charity in order to take a firm stance on a guy he was claiming not to take.
He doesn't look bad on that. He looks bad to you on that, but most people go like, oh, that makes sense because it could have had a much more catastrophically negative impact on like future creator clashes if he was allowed to be there in the first place.
Take a firm stance on. Hindsight is 20/20, I suppose. Between the first and second creator clash about a year apart, iDubbbz only released 2 videos not relating to those events, one dunking on Doomsday Preppers, the other of him making a Thanos fidget toy. From what I understand, Ian was focusing a lot on training.
He's still doing pretty well view-wise on these videos that he releases. If he just continuously released these, he probably would be doing pretty well.
For the next fight and getting the event in order during this time. It was becoming more common to see videos that were critical of iDubbbz at this point as his audience was getting to be more and more divided. The tiny bit of content that iDubbbz made during that time was safe and stale, making it easier for people to start disliking his channel, which was once known for being the opposite of safe and stale. Even though iDubbbz had already put off parts of his audience in different ways, all he had to do to fix things was to start making some decent content again.
No, that's not how things would be fixed. All he had to do is just continue to make this content that he was happier with making. And just move on and not respond to commentary people. A big part of the focus of this video is that like iDubbbz should go back to what he was doing. I mean, I just disagree. He doesn't have to go back. It's okay to get older and mature and change. Even if he didn't disavow his old content. Like, it's okay to change and have different interests and focus. It sounds like his focus now is on making like some just silly content. Whereas before, it was more of like criticizing other people. Like, that's not that big of a deal. Thank you so much for the 5 months small gut from Saketh. I think I'm saying Saketh. Correct me if I'm wrong. Roll Tide, Papa. Keep up the great content. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know he had a lot on his plate with Creator Clash 2, but think about it. He was at the low point of his YouTube career where his audience had the most amount of doubt in him and his brand than...
I mean, he was pulling like 1 million views on those 2 videos you showed, so it's kind of hard to say that.
...ever before. The only 2 videos separate from...
It's quite a low point.
...from Creator Clash that he released in that year were passionless, childish nothings.
They both had... One has 827,000, one has 1 million. I'm just saying that, like, low point in his career. I mean, if that is his low point, that's pretty impressive.
So not only was the public's opinion of him as a person changing, but their opinion of his content was changing for the worse as well. But what about his opinion of the audience? About a month before Creator Clash 2, iDubbbz decided to be a guest on Anthony Padilla's podcast.
I watched that. The general sentiment from that is like he was, again, he's too in his feelings about the supposed negative impact that he's had, and like he's overcorrecting. Like, he's got to stop with that. Like, it's getting kind of annoying when you're just constantly talking about how bad of your content wasn't really that bad. It's overcorrecting, and he's just being annoying. You know? It's pronounced Sucketh. Sucketh. Is that it? Did I say it right? Sucketh my balls. I'm just kidding. If that's your name, I'm... Sorry for being disrespectful.
Podcast.
Thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. How amplified did it get?
Gender role type shit and like what an idea of how men need to be.
Depression, anxiety, stress, insecurity.
Men need to be sexy and naked.
I cry a lot more often.
Allowing
that's gay as fuck.
Me to have empathy for my younger self.
Listen, man. It's okay to cry sometimes. You know, your dog dies. You have a baby at your wedding. You stub your toe. But crying a lot, I just don't think it's necessary to cry all the time. I don't know. I just don't think you need to be crying all the time. Like, I'll tell you, I've cried before. You know, I've cried. It's okay to cry sometimes. But very rarely. Okay, you shouldn't be crying all the time as a guy. And you might be like, well, even, I mean, you don't have to cry all the time in general. I mean, if you want to cry, it's fine. Keep it to yourself. And that's my opinion. I don't really care if you think that's a little aggressive. I don't think you need to be crying all the time about shit, even as a woman. You know, I think it's generally more acceptable for women to cry more often, but you know what I mean? Keep it to yourself, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I come off as a little regressive here, but I don't really care.
Gaining empathy?
Yeah.
I'm not...
You can be empathetic without having to fucking cry. You know what I mean?
Going to go over the history of this podcast, but look at some of these thumbnails. I was being brainwashed.
Oh, Sawketh. Gotcha.
He knew that I was afraid of the dark. I shouldn't be alive. I won't repeat the bad words. Many clips from the...
I do. Just offline.
This interview circulated on...
Bro, I hate it, because I try not to say bad words, but sometimes I'm just so fucking angry. You know what I mean? I'm playing like a game and I'm just like... I try not to say them though. You know what I mean? It's insensitive, but...
Twitter, most notably the official YouTube short on Anthony's channel. This was also the intro of the video, so it wasn't just the public emphasizing that part.
Another thing that ended up kind of guiding the path a little bit, I did not like the interactions that I had with fans. There were quite a few human beings that I interacted with.
In person?
Yeah, in person, that just sucked. They just sucked because I attracted a lot of people who sucked. Some people were,
I don't think this is a bad point. It's funny because I've never had a negative interaction with fans in public. And I don't think I've ever had like super edgy like scumbag fans ever. So, you know.
I described earlier.
What happened? Oh my God. What about when you laugh so hard you cry? That's fine. I think we understand that's a little different.
We're very much like antisocial, weird basement dwellers. And, you know, the one time a month that they come out of their cave is going to restock on supplies at Walmart, and they run into...
Hey, don't be criticizing Walmart.
Me, their favorite YouTuber.
What would they say? What would they do?
Things that I am certainly not going to repeat. I'm talking bad words.
If you have an audience of millions and millions of people, you're not going to get along with or like every single one of them. Some of them are going to misinterpret the things you say.
Well, okay, so just to be clear, what iDubbbz is talking about is the people that he meets, and maybe he's being inaccurate, but let's take him at face value. It seems like what he's saying is most of the people that he meets in person are too edgy for him, and that would be problematic. It's okay to think that. Like, if your closest fans are like, or that are showing up to meet you in person are fucking crazy, yeah, maybe your content is a little too silly, right? Again, I don't think I've had a single bad interaction with like fans where it was like the super edgy pieces of shit that were like, oh, I'm a big fan of you, right? So I've never had this issue. There's a difference between like some people misinterpreting versus like your most closest fans misinterpreting your shit. I mean, yeah, so.
Others may have social issues, especially considering the time we live in. These things can't really be controlled or fixed by a YouTuber, no matter how they approach making content. It's not
they can be kind of like if you're attracting a particular audience and you're like, oh, I don't want to attract that audience, you might want to shift up your content a little bit.
On the creator to make
and disavow that audience in some capacity.
Responsible art. It's up to the viewer to consume it responsibly, to an extent, obviously advocating for violence or...
I mean, if you have people showing up saying the N-word, which is what he's kind of alluding to, you might be like, maybe I need a little bit of a change. Which probably comes from the Tanamangu thing. And I'm not going to lie, when I first saw that years ago, before I was even on the internet as like a creator, I thought it was funny. It's also a different time back then. But I mean, if anybody ever walked up to me and said like a racial slur, I'd be flabbergasted. I'd just tell the person to shut the fuck up. You know? So, again, if that's what people are mostly doing, he might want to be like, oh shit, I'm attracting the wrong audience. I got to change something up a little bit. So...
Something like that would be crossing a line. If artists and content creators are too concerned with what kind of influence their work has, we wind up with biased and hollow media and art. This is...
No. Again, like, I just disagree that you shouldn't be worried about, like, what you're communicating to your audience. I think it's a silly point. Like, that's such a ridiculous point to make. Like, you should be concerned with how you're communicating to your audience. You are going to always have some crazies who might misinterpret your shit, but, like, you should overall be concerned. And when you have a consistent pattern of people walking up to you in person and being comfortable saying, like, bigoted slurs, you might want to reconsider the way that you've been expressing yourself. That doesn't mean that iDubbbz isn't overcorrecting. He is overcorrecting. He has been overcorrecting, in my opinion. But it's okay to be sensitive to that and be like, okay, I think I need to make a little bit of a change or a shift. You're being silly by saying that.
That's how iDubbbz recalls the interview roughly a year later.
In my mind, it's just like really bad communication on my part, because I started doing things that I would say are like out of character for me, like me just going on the Anthony Padilla podcast. There was a line in there that sounded like really harsh, and it was like, yeah, when the basement dwelling person like comes out and sees their favorite YouTuber, they say a slur or something.
It was much more than just a single line about basement dwellers, though.
I think he's just trying to say he felt bad because he was a little too harsh on people and they got the wrong idea of what he meant. But I understand what he means when he's talking. It seems like other people don't understand it.
The interview has to do with how much more mature and righteous he's become and how he feels about his past work as well as his fans. The entire thing comes off as a message to the haters. He never bothered to clarify himself either.
People thought...
Well, isn't he clarifying himself right there?
Oh, he's talking about me when they've never done that to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the vast majority of people who watch and enjoy your content would never do that.
Yeah.
But they thought that you were talking about them and saying that, you know, that they fell under that blanket.
Yeah. And
Isn't this him... Wait, what? Isn't this him?
Yeah.
He never bothered to clarify himself either.
Isn't that him clarifying himself right there? Now, you would argue that he didn't bother clarifying himself soon enough so people could maintain the wrong idea. But just be clear, you're showing him, clarifying it.
That they fell under that blanket.
I think at this point it's time that iDubbbz needs to stop caring about like how poorly he's communicated and just move forward with different content, because he's just not going to win at this point. He definitely didn't communicate himself particularly well, and it's time to just kind of move on.
Yeah, and I really wasn't trying too hard to even correct that when it was coming out.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I'm just like, I already felt out of my element talking about a lot of the shit that I talked about on the Anthony Padilla podcast.
It's your first time ever publicly talking about anything.
Yeah, so yeah, it was hard, and I was like, oh man.
Was it? I feel like he's always talking about it.
And I don't feel like I'm at all ready to be making like or issuing corrections or anything like that if I've fucked it up this bad already.
I just don't buy this narrative that iDubbbz wasn't trying to make a general statement about his content and his audience, yet didn't care enough or feel sensible enough to properly clarify himself.
Okay. I mean, we did talk earlier about like how I think it's a little more complicated. Earlier about how it can be difficult to acknowledge when you're wrong because criticisms can feel overwhelming. But
he was confident enough to double down on this stance a couple months after the Padilla interview with a main channel upload. This wasn't an error in communication. iDubbbz said the things he meant to got a worse reaction from the public than he was expecting and went on to regret it.
I just kind of disagree.
Contrast here.
I think it's more complicated than that. I don't even know if I could articulate exactly my entire perspective either. For me, again, I've been a content creator. I've never been as successful as iDubbbz, but I used to be a very large TikToker. I'm regaining my popularity on there again. I know what it's like to be, I guess, kind of famous, not necessarily successful, because again, you get more views than success on TikTok. And so I can kind of understand having like, potentially generating an audience that you don't necessarily want. And I get some of what he's saying on a more intuitive level because I just like understand it because I've been there before. I'm not better than anybody. It's just like I have like that life experience a little bit, so it's easier for me to understand. But it's not easy for me to completely articulate what I mean. So
here's what iDubbbz says in general about his new direction about 6 months after the Padilla podcast.
Hate watchers or like old fans that haven't like moved on is like thinking that like all of this is like by accident. Like my choices are just like, a series of unfortunate events. And it's like, that's not what it is. It's like super intentional. Like I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And here's what he says about 15 months after the Padilla podcast, after it became abundantly clear that his new direction wasn't working out.
In my mind, it's just like really bad communication on my part. I don't feel like I'm at all ready to be making like or issuing.
I mean, him doubling down at first and then him reflecting for a while doesn't necessarily mean that he's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. I personally, I don't think iDubbbz is like a bad person. I don't think that he's a manipulative person. I think that it's all just part of like the growth process, and we're seeing it live, and he's being very meaningful about it and talking about it very publicly. So it's going to change what he thinks and feels about things. That's why you shouldn't be expressing it publicly in this way, because it doesn't give you the ability to have that more meaningful like change, because people are going to be like, hey, this is inconsistent with this and that,
doing corrections. Or
it's not like you ever generated an audience of people who consider these things, so.
Or anything like that, if I've fucked it up this bad already.
It was a deliberate choice to flip off his audience, so to speak, a choice he now regrets because of how terribly it backfired. He can't walk all of it back because then he'll seem even more deceitful given how much time has passed. He can't fully commit to that stance because it's been
they're repeating the old catchphrase N-word F-slur. Oh, okay. That's probably what they're saying to him in public. I'd be mortified if people said that shit to me in public too. I'd be like, what the fuck?
Ruining his career. When he takes this fence-sitting revisionist approach, he comes off as feeble and delusional. The only good move he has is to stop dwelling on this predicament.
That we can definitely agree with.
Something he clearly struggles with. It's been over a year since this interview. Here's a moment that aged like whole milk.
And you've said that anyone who focuses their entire career on making edgy content, edgy jokes, eventually finds themselves wanting to do something more fulfilling with their lives.
Totally.
What is the fulfilling thing?
I don't think that always. I mean, I understand Ethan Klein and iDubbbz have changed a little bit. I still enjoy making edgy content. I just, I don't think, I was never known for saying slurs. So it was never quite that negative in my content. So I guess I just didn't hit that precipice,
Now.
I made this like fidget toy.
Yeah.
You pop zits
Thanos'
out of.
colorful zits?
Yes.
The fulfilling.
Oh, that's your fulfillment? Is Thanos popping zits? Okay, well.
Things now are fidget toy videos along with a podcast about his wife destroying his livelihood.
I don't think it's that deep, but okay.
It's been a while since iDubbbz went on fidget toy videos.
I mean, that's fine.
Along with a podcast about
that he's finally making other content. I don't know if it's interesting. She ruined my career podcast. Well, I think that's, again, they shouldn't be talking about this so often. It just seems stupid. What's their podcast called? Maximum Image. Dude, who's fucking texting me? Shut up. I'm just kidding, it's my wife. I think that's really a clickbait title that's like, she ruined my, ruined my career. But did they change the name of it? I think they changed the name of the podcast episode. Oh, or is the whole podcast called She Ruined My Career? Wait, I'm so confused about this. What is this? Or maybe he just changed the title. It's so weird. Oh, no, the whole podcast is called She Ruined My Career. Oh, wait, why would you make... Well, actually, I was wrong. Why would you even make that called She Ruined My Career podcast? It just seems stupid. Like, you're just continuously inviting this. It's a kind of a cope to maintain this. I don't understand. It's a little bit of a cope to maintain this energy and like continuously invite this energy. But okay, if that's what you want to do, okay.
About his wife destroying his livelihood. It's been a while since iDubbbz went on his supposed empathy.
I think that he probably thinks it's like, oh, I'm what is it called? I'm reclaiming the situation, but it really just comes off as kind of like stupid and petty.
The arc, and what has he or anyone else gained from it? What good has come from this?
Being that way, being avoidant and not, sharing feelings or thoughts and hoarding them has led to a lot of missed business opportunities, a lot of missed personal connections. I'm trying to get better at it.
Because I don't see any signs of flourishing or getting better with communication or making personal connections. I see someone who has continued to struggle.
Okay.
Creator Clash 2 was a disaster for the most part. The production was still solid, but the major headline was, charity boxing event loses $250,000. There are a few reasons why it did so poor financially. First, they spent too much money on the event. I don't know all of the specifics, but I do know they had about twice the amount of fighters on the card than before.
Yeah, and like the reality...
They had Anisa.
And the reality is that like not every fighter that they had on the ticket was somebody that people necessarily cared about. Part of the problem is probably going to be, and these are growing pains that we learn as creators, that popular TikTokers don't mean anything compared to popular YouTubers. Like I think about almost 600K now on TikTok. I have 50K on YouTube. What does that mean to you guys? That means that my 600K on TikTok is equal to 50K on YouTube. So when you have 2 million follower TikTok accounts, that's like a 100,000 or 200,000 follower YouTube, which is not bad. But is it really that big? 1 million on TikTok means isn't even as good, in my opinion, as 100,000 on YouTube. So, when you have so many big TikTokers, it's like, some people get tens of thousands of followers off one viral video and can never replicate that video. So I think that's part of it too. You have so many more people. Oh, well, this guy's got 1 million. This guy has 2 million. This guy, but they don't mean anything. You know what I mean? I haven't seen a TikToker on there that's particularly popular. Now, if we saw somebody like more of like a Joe Bartolosi on there, that's a very meaningfully popular TikToker that has a lot of social currency, who's also been able to emulate that on YouTube. But we're not seeing those individuals. So that's also going to be part of it, is like you're not going to get a lot out of a popular TikToker as you are out of like a popular YouTuber. And I think that's part of the growing pains, is like as we see, because TikTok and short form content creators are blowing up more and more, becoming more and more popular, but they don't have the same weight. You being able to sit through a minute of a TikTok isn't the same as you sitting through an hour of a YouTube video. These are very different audiences, so...
Celebrities there other than the fighters to host and make appearances, although I'm not sure if or how much they were paid. The venue was twice the size and they held a gala as well. I'm not sure exactly how much money they brought in, but either way, Creator Clash 2 wound up costing more than it made, and it definitely cost more to run than the first event. Second, they did a poor job promoting...
I mean, it's growing pains, to be honest with you.
...the event.
In my opinion, though, iDubbbz has this whole empty channel, and like I said this the first time, it just seems stupid not to utilize that and make that a Creator Clash YouTube. They could have, like, I don't understand why. I see that he's making some content here and there, but this whole channel, in my opinion, especially at the time he wasn't even producing content, should just be Creator Clash, interviews, like podcast, talking to this fighter before the game, or before the fight, talking to that fighter before the fight, promoting this, advertising this, doing this live stream, doing that, boom, 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 boom. Just hammering over and over again. Creator Clash. I think that this is where that channel should have went. Make money with the channel while also advertising your boxing event. That makes the most sense to me, instead of making a video every 7 months for what? You know what I mean? It makes the most sense to me. It just makes so much more sense.
Wouldn't have taken much effort for someone like iDubbbz to draw more attention. He made 2 videos about it in January, and the event was in April. He might have mentioned it on Twitter, but he really should have made at least a main channel video about it a week or 2 before the event. The fighters didn't do much to promote it either. There wasn't much beef or drama, which is often a big part of what draws a crowd to a fight. Manufacturing drama is lame, but I think it's a bit different when you're literally scheduled to punch someone in the face for the sake of entertainment. More interaction.
They didn't even have to necessarily manufacture it, you know what I mean? Like, you know, there is a difference between manufacturing it and like having people be like, oh, I'm confident, I'm gonna win, kind of a thing, and be a little shit talky. You know, faking cancer for content is a little different than being like, do you think you can beat this person? Doing a podcast about it and like having both sides of the people. Like, I just don't understand why you didn't do that. You could have done so much. You could have done so much to be able to promote that.
Between the fighters leading up to the event would have gone on.
Like, you're a YouTuber that wasted all your clout not utilizing that aspect of your content, you know? I mean, aspect of your, like, fame.
Long way. Although, when one fighter tried talking trash, he wound up getting removed from the card, which brings us...
Well, he associated himself with Sam Hyde, and that is obviously a stupid idea, especially since we all learned from the first one, Sam Hyde was banned from the event. This is on him for this one.
To the next reason why creator...
And I love the song, Why Is James Crying? Because he just got dunked on. I used to listen to Froggy Fresh all the time. He was so funny. And he still is. He's still a funny, like, entertaining guy. But, like, you know, he did make that mistake there by associating with Sam Hyde, especially now that it was very explicit. So that's kind of on him.
Clash 2 failed. The way they handled the Froggy Fresh situation.
How am I the
I don't
simp?
think that the Froggy Fresh situation had any impact on the actual event itself, just to be clear. I think it's the lack of advertisement more than anything else.
How am I the simp? I want to know. Is it because it's a woman? It's because it's a woman, isn't it?
For those who aren't familiar, Froggy Fresh, now known as Tyler Cassidy, is a YouTuber whom...
I've seen his, sometimes I see his TikToks, it's pretty funny. He makes, like, songs that people request about, like, their friends and some fun stuff.
Makes music, often in a humorous way. He was going to be fighting at Creator Clash 2, but was cut from the fight only a few weeks beforehand. There are a lot of details to the Froggy Fresh debacle, so I'm just going to go over some of the key points and show some of the more recent things that iDubbbz and Anisa has had to say about them.
It's because of he associated with Sam Hyde being like his trainer or his boxing whatever, his coach or whatever.
Here's the main reason that Ian gave for cutting Froggy from the fight.
The main reason Froggy was kicked from the card was for collaborating with Sam Hyde.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, at this point he's explicitly banned, so you know what I mean?
And, you know, for anyone who's been following the story, that's, you know, fairly obvious.
Many people thought it had to do with a lighthearted joke that Froggy made about Anisa's OF account.
On April 15th.
That's probably a part of it too.
If I don't hurt you beyond what anybody could have imagined, I will be so disappointed in myself that I will subscribe to Anisa's OnlyFans.
And I wouldn't doubt if that was at least part of the reason why they kicked him.
It might have been. I think it's probably more the Sam Hyde thing.
Fortunately,
and again, like, Sam Hyde is constantly, you know, taking shots at iDubbbz and his wife, so it makes sense that he wouldn't have him banned. So
he's been perpetuating a narrative that it's about OnlyFans or that it's about Anisa's mom, and that's extremely deceptive.
iDubbbz said that it had nothing to do with Froggy getting kicked, but Anisa's mom was on Twitter getting involved in the drama, and we've seen that the whole OF thing...
Well, Anisa's mom's a fucking idiot in this context. Sorry. But, like, you should be staying out of this online stuff.
Still upsets Ian.
I don't want other people to be uncomfortable because you're there. Like, you don't get the vibe, all right? The vibe is sex workers and fighting, I guess. And you don't like the sex workers part.
So I'm pretty sure that had an impact on their decision. However, now they're saying he got kicked because he wasn't showing up for training.
Yeah, there were a lot of very justifiable reasons.
Yeah, including, like, not showing up to training.
Yes.
Froggy Fresh addressed this on Twitter. Imagine over a year later talking in your Secret Dungeon podcast, you're too cowardly to publicly broadcast, still coping and lying, saying the reason I was kicked out of your boxing event was because I didn't show up for training.
Well, I mean, they shouldn't still be talking about this. This is them being stupid and constantly talking about old stuff. Like, stop bringing up this old shit. That's not how you deal with this as, like, a more mainstream boxing organization. Why are you still talking about it? It's time to, like, move on. So, like, Froggy Fresh is right there. Like, stop talking about the reason. Maybe there was a factor. It's enough is enough. Stop bringing it up. Stop talking about it. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Did that info come from the alcoholic boxing promoter your business partner set up as my coach who couldn't find me someone to spar or was too scared to spar himself that I was given permission to get rid of? The guy who was 1.5 hours drive one way that was getting paid under the table, telling me not to let the gym owner know he was getting paid because he was lying, saying that he was training me for free for a charity event? The guy who would cancel when I was in my car ready to drive 1.5 hours early as shit because he had diarrhea?
I mean, all these things might be true.
Imagine doing a 1.5 hour podcast crying about your haters lying a year later when no one fucking cares.
So it doesn't sound like they're necessarily lying. Based on what Froggy Fresh is saying, it sounds like they were saying it was truthful but deceptive. That they had a shitty trainer organized to help Froggy Fresh, and that they were inconsistent. So it's not really his fault for not being able to show up. I wouldn't doubt that. But this is why you guys have to stop talking about this shit. It's like you look so dumb and immature when iDubbbz and Anisa continuously talk about this stuff, which you do not need to continuously talk about. It's just like you have to stop harboring so much resentment for these situations.
Yes, not all of your haters are incels. Stop the cap. iDubbbz and Anisa do use that as a deflection rather often. The funny thing is that most people...
They probably do. I think that some of their haters are probably incelish, but now they've gotten into that area where it's like we can just write it all the criticism off on this, you know? So...
People who clown on their relationship probably have more relationship experience than both of them put together. They're able to see the problems that iDubbbz and Anisa are blind to.
I doubt that most of the people criticizing their relationship have a particularly high amount of relationship experience, just to be clear. I doubt that. But I do think that they're getting a little too comfortable writing everybody's criticisms off.
Also, it doesn't make sense that iDubbbz didn't bring up Froggy not showing up to training in his video.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Don't think that Froggy was perfect in all of this. It does look like he dropped the ball at least once when it came to communication and dodged responsibility.
He uploaded a Twitter video to explain the context for why he didn't respond to Anisa.
Anisa's concern text of hope everything's going okay was a way for her to try to manipulate the situation, to try to do further investigation into my friendship with Sam Hyde.
He thinks this text message is manipulation. No, Froggy, we wanted to solve
into my friendship with...
Hey, I'm not with Ian. I'm home visiting family. Ian called me not feeling great. I'm just trying to understand what's happening.
Sam Hyde.
He thinks this text message...
Or how it can help. That doesn't seem manipulative, but... Okay.
Message is manipulation. No, Froggy, we wanted to solve the problem.
And that sucks, but as someone managing a boxing event between YouTubers, Ian needs to be able to handle situations with people he doesn't always get along with. If working with Froggy really was that uncomfortable for Ian, then he could just exclude him from future events.
Well, again, he was working with Sam Hyde, who is explicitly banned from this event, so it's kind of on Froggy Fresh in this one.
But finding a replacement fighter under such short notice was a potentially dangerous move physically. Chris Raygun, 5'5", was scheduled to fight Froggy Fresh, 5'2". Chris wound up fighting William Haynes, Froggy's last-second replacement, who is 5'10", 8 inches taller than the person Chris was expecting to fight. Finding an appropriately sized YouTuber, physically and in terms of popularity, who is competent and willing to fight under such short notice is not easy. Then there's the fact that Froggy trained with Sam Hyde, which also contributed to his ban. Froggy's association with Sam came as a surprise to Ian, but it would have been good for the event. It's good.
No, probably it wouldn't have been good for the event. Just to be clear, you gotta stop thinking that this is true because it's really not.
Good to have antagonists and rivalry and competition.
It's not good to have somebody has an extraordinary. I don't even know how many times we have to explain this. Sam Hyde would have been suicide for the event. It's just the reality. As much as you might like him, he's not going to have a good overall impact. The fact that the event failed, it didn't completely fail, but it lost $250,000, has nothing to do with Sam Hyde being there or not. It would have been catastrophic. It would have ruined advertiser confidence in the next event. A 3 would have never happened. So this idea that it would have been good is just not true. What you're saying, you don't know what you're talking about. They needed to be better about what they advertised it wrong. They spent too much money in some areas. They were being stupid about it. They increased the card too much. That's what it comes down to. They did quantity over quality.
And that's what sells tickets, especially in something like boxing. This response video made iDubbbz look unprofessional and petty because it was.
It didn't. The thumbnail just, but I remember watching it. It really wasn't that bad.
If you exclude people who, 1, don't agree with adult entertainment, and 2, enjoy drama from your social media boxing event, then you're going to be left with a much smaller audience in the world of YouTuber boxing, of all things. Ian also had this to say about Froggy's take on OF models.
I don't think Froggy was...
Yes, people are coping because it would have been hilarious. Yes, it would have been funny, but it wouldn't have raised revenue or had a positive impact overall.
Sex workers. I think he has some really old, tired opinions about people who do sex work. I think he has a lot of weird opinions as well about masculinity and shit.
This shows a more cultural and political side of iDubbbz. In terms of his career and image, he went from carefree to putting all of his eggs in the politically correct basket.
When do you think the stigma...
I mean, yeah, I don't know why you'd associate with Hassan over there.
Around your controversial videos will end, and you can make more. Well, I don't think it's going to end. What I'm noticing is that, like, as long as we continue to progress how we're progressing, like, we're just becoming more socially aware and careful about what we say things or who's feeling.
You don't have to be you can be edgy without being controversial. Just to be clear, I don't think I'm a particularly controversial content creator. I'm edgy though.
feelings were hurting and shit like that. And I think the people who are like trying to ignore it or pretend that it's not happening or pretend that like it doesn't have to be that way, it's like you're seeing it in every like developed nation.
UFC has Trump and fighters saying wild shit all the time. If it was fans just want to chime in. I understand what you're saying, but like you have to understand that there's a difference between like a creator clash and the UFC. There's just it's even comparing a creator clash to UFC it's almost insulting to the UFC. The advertisers that they had for the creator clash were not going to maintain with Sam Hyde attached to it. I genuinely don't believe that it would happen. And frankly, I don't think Trump, at least at the time, was as controversial in this. I mean, maybe at the time, well, at least at the time, I don't think it was as controversial. But it's a different audience, it's different advertisers, it's different people. I don't think most Creator Clash fans are like these UFC style individuals. Boxing in and of itself has been, in my opinion, dying as the UFC has been pushing up. That's why you're seeing more influencers doing boxing, because it's generally safer and like less difficult to do than like legitimate UFC. I'm not saying boxing is like easy. I'm just saying that it's a very different thing. So just because the UFC can get away with being much more edgy, which is fine for them, doesn't mean that every other event or any other even fighting event could get away with the same. They're way different. They're very different. It's much, much, much different. Again, I don't think it's unreasonable to say advertiser confidence would have drastically reduced allowing Sam Hyde into the event.
There isn't like any like society that we're seeing that is just so different that's like, oh yeah, like it's complete anarchy in Australia. They say whatever the fuck they want and they, you know, do this and that. It's like, no, like
what?
People are doing what they're doing.
The fuck is he talking about?
I don't like framing the changes with iDubbbz as political, but that has become a part of his image, one that he's chosen to lean into more and more over the past few years. I could keep going over the Froggy Fresh drama because there are a lot of smaller details, but I'm more interested in the other things that Ian said in that video. For one, the way he talks about Creator Clash 2. Keep in mind, this is a month before he announces that the event lost $250,000.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. A brief update. I am healed from Creator Clash 2. It was a success.
In what way was Creator Clash 2 a success? Because now they recall it as an emotional gut punch that they'll never get over.
We really believed in what we were doing. And then to be greeted with
probably on that cope.
Pirating to the point where like we couldn't even pay back what we had like put on the table to put on the event.
Yeah.
Like was such a emotional gut punch that I feel like I'm never going to get over. I feel like we decided we were going to fall onto our like dullest, rustiest sword and spin around 10 times.
Yeah.
But we're sitting there waiting for the doctor to come in to stitch Ian's eye up. And we're trying to digest the idea that we like only sold 50K pay-per-views. And we looked at each other and we were like, do you want to just like ourselves? Like literally, like there was like that actual like, thought.
It was a success.
Calling Creator Clash 2 a success is a lie. It was bad for their image, it did horribly financially speaking, and it's something they still stress over today.
Yeah, I mean, they need to stop stressing over it. It seems like it was a failure, but not an absolute failure. They lost money. That would make it a failure. People still tuned in. People are still willing to engage in it. The way that they failed, obviously, we already identified the fact that they did bad with their advertisement. They spent too much money. In my opinion, they got too many fighters, especially since people didn't necessarily care about it. 3 could be successful if they learn from the failures of 2. Like that could be like a big aspect of it, but they have to improve upon like that failure.
They should have sold it when they had the chance.
I wonder if you guys can like sell.
They probably, well, maybe they should have.
Creator Clash almost and get a payday that way.
Well, we've been offered.
Already?
Yeah. By Fox.
Fox?
Whoa. Yeah, we said no.
With 7 figures?
How much was
I think so, yeah. 7 figures.
Like low 7 figures. Can you just tell me the number?
A few of them.
I mean, I don't know what it was specifically. It didn't come directly to us. It came to one of our business partners, but we said no, and we're never going to do anything like that just because it's too special.
It loses its soul.
You guys do need to be making money, though. You understand that, right?
We lost $250,000 on the event.
He could have made over $1 million and easily shifted focus back to his YouTube channel, saving his financial situation and beyond.
He could have, but I don't think it's unreasonable for him to be like, "Oh, that's my baby. I want to maintain it." Like I don't think anybody would criticize him for that. Maybe they would.
It's also the way that iDubbbz talks about Anisa here, which I think is disingenuous.
Let me just say, Anisa
is just trying to exist. You know, she doesn't want anything to do with the drama. She doesn't want anything to do with his shit. And I have brought a lot of it into her life.
But Anisa isn't just trying to exist. She's a public figure seeking to make a living off of lust and attention. She's a public figure who's
lust and attention. Again, why do you care about her doing OnlyFans? It's like, that's what makes some of the criticisms that you come up with so like weird. Who gives a shit?
Married to another public figure. And as we'll talk about more later,
I think they're just trying to say like Anisa's just trying to exist and people keep harassing her, which there might be a level of truth to it. I will say one thing that's like frustrating about this video is it made no mention to talk about how Sanhide like was at a certain point regularly criticizing Anisa and like being very, you know, hateful of Anisa. It brings up nothing about it. She might be an unlikable person, which is fair. But again, like, you know, it's going to be a hard, it's a hard sell when you're constantly harassing somebody's wife and saying like disparaging things about them publicly to feel like you're entitled to show up to an event. Like, it is a huge thing. I'm just saying, like, I mean, it's interesting that that's not really being brought up in any capacity. It's a little bit bizarre to me.
Someone who is intentionally provocative.
It's kind of like when you go fishing and you go to a new lake and you're like, I'm just gonna like throw out like I don't know, a grasshopper that I found on the ground and just a big old trout.
Saying that Anisa is just trying to exist is bullshit. Ian also tries to attribute his recent changes to himself rather than Anisa, something which he goes back and forth on.
Unfortunately, a lot of people who think that I've changed or call me a or whatever, they've decided instead of saying that I've changed and that I'm the decider of my future, it's that Anisa has changed me.
Do you feel?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having your partner change you. My wife has changed me in a positive way. You know, it just depends on how much you own that change. Oh, there's the fucking thing. I went the wrong way.
Like this conversation today, this interview would be different if you had never gotten into the boxing stuff?
Yeah, it would be. I think I'd be less vulnerable in general. And I'd say Anisa has been very like instrumental. I think most guys can say that about their partners, is like they're going to have insight that you cannot have about yourself.
She happened to be a family therapist and a trauma therapist. And Ian just came up in passing and she was like, oh, do you want some like homework? Like she was like, would he be willing to come in? And at the time he definitely wasn't.
They, you know, they hold the mirror up and they say, this is like this thing that you're doing or whatever. It's very ugly. You might want to think about that.
And so she started giving me homework. And at the time he wasn't very like open to it. He was like, yeah, whatever. And then I found you and we started watching you, and you kind of like bridged the gap for him where he was like, oh, like this is what therapy kind of is.
Instead of saying that I've changed, it's that Anisa has changed me.
This is a big part of the reason why Anisa gets so much hate. iDubbbz gives her a lot of credit for helping him reinvent himself, but then they both get upset and confused when people attribute his change in personality to Anisa. It's a have your cake and eat it too kind of situation.
I guess. I think that their frustrations more on they're upset that Anisa has changed him negatively. And there's a level of truth to that. The fundamental change isn't the issue. Being more sensitive isn't the issue. It's the way that he's being overly sensitive that's the problem. So, like, you know, I think that reasonable people understand that. You're never going to necessarily appeal to, like, people that... You're going to have a hard time appealing to younger commentary individuals that don't have any meaningful relationships with, like, a partner, that haven't really gone through, like, a maturing moment. Because there are a lot of people that are like that. And you're never going to communicate that to them because they're not communicating perfectly. As me, somebody who's a little bit older, more mature than most other people in this space, which aren't exactly, it's not exactly difficult to be, you know, who's married, I've settled down, getting ready to have kids, you know, I understand what he's going through. Like, men tend to be changed when they're with women. They gain more empathy, a little bit of a different perspective. I think he's overcorrecting. He's becoming too... I guess almost too empathetic, I guess you could say. But I understand what he's saying or where he's coming from. I can kind of understand some of these struggles on like a more intuitive level that he's going through than like other people who just see cringe, which is true. There is cringe. But that's, you know, that's where you're going to have the disconnect. I don't think every aspect of him is bad. I think it's fine to be more emotional. I think that he's focusing too much on the changes, though. He's, you know, he's overcorrecting. I've said that before, so.
For her, where she wants credit for Ian's content as well as his recent maturation until she realizes or remembers that most people hate the new direction. She has clearly had a direct impact.
I don't think most people hate, well, most people do hate the new direction. I don't think most people, just to be clear, I think there's a difference between saying that you hate the new direction versus saying that you hate the direction in general. The new direction is fine, but they've gone too far. Again, that is the issue. People are still watching and engaging with his content. We saw he was getting like 1 million views on his videos when he would post them. But he's engaging too much with like the criticism and the commentary and all this other bullshit. Like, just make the content, shut the fuck up, and stop apologizing for shit. You've said it like 100 times. We get it.
Impact on Ian and his career. This brings us to the most important reason why Creator Clash 2 failed, and it may be obvious at this point. Ian's reputation as a YouTuber. None of this.
I don't think that really had anything to do with it, to be absolutely honest with you.
Stuff from a year prior with Sam Hyde was resolved. It actually got more tense with the whole Froggy Fresh situation. The interview with Anthony Padilla from the month before only aggravated fans further, understandably so. He hadn't been making videos for a while. Even promotions for Creator Clash were few and far between. He and Anisa started to go on podcasts more, opening.
We hate watch. Well, yeah, you hate watch now because they're going on their fucking streams and having meltdowns. That's the real big criticism. They're having meltdowns about criticism that doesn't matter, and they're constantly feeding it. And they're making an entire. This is the issue. They're making like an entire podcast that's about like his wife, people hating his wife, and also like they're branding some of their aspects around that. But fundamentally, it's not an issue that he's decided to be less controversial. It's the way that he's decided to do that that's the problem.
Themselves up to new kinds of criticism. People were, once again, more unsure about iDubbbz than ever. The bad financial decisions, the lack of marketing, and the Froggy Fresh situation wouldn't have swayed public opinion so much if Ian hadn't been digging his heels in for the last few years, growing.
Well, the lack of marketing is probably the biggest issue.
More defiant towards his supporters. Overall, Creator Clash 2 and the way it was handled was probably the single most devastating thing to happen to the iDubbbz brand. If they would have taken a more laissez-faire approach, they would have been fine, and they know that.
When you work with people, you have to accept that you're inviting chaos. When you try to like grab onto it and control it, you're only asking for pain on your end and pain for like the event. And sometimes you really do have to make the call of like, I have to take my hands completely off and just like accept that I'm working with unpredictable people.
And I don't like unpredictable people. Period. I just don't.
iDubbbz and Anisa's egos constantly get in the way of things. They seem to understand at least some of the problems they have, but refuse to acknowledge them in an honest or meaningful way. It would be difficult for them to admit that.
He's making so much content around this stuff. It's so annoying. For like, just shut the fuck up about it. Stop reflecting publicly about your failures. Like, just stop, because they're just inviting criticism. Just like, shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ.
Their failures are better understood by the people who stopped watching their content, by the people they detest. So Ian doubles down. Shortly after Creator Clash 2, iDubbbz would apologize for much of his past content and unlist all of his Content Cop videos. For an apology, this video is titled in a strange way. I Miss the Old iDubbbz is a title that directly addresses—
well, it's not titled particularly weird. I get the title.
The fans, as most of the video does. He apologizes to Tana and others he's made critical videos on, but it's more of a message to the fans than an apology. For anyone unfamiliar, iDubbbz made a video, a Content Cop, on Tana, a Storytime YouTuber who said—
where he said the N-word.
I hope iDubbbz loses all of his subscribers and breaks both of his legs. In the video, he walked up to Tana at a fan meetup and dropped the hard R when they were getting their picture taken together. This is because Tana had complained about Ian's use of the N-word, while it turns out she had used it in a much worse context. That and Ian—
is this a base alert?
His other critical videos are what he's apologizing for.
Also with the apology, it's like, I wasn't necessarily looking out for the feelings of people who have been watching and enjoying my Content Cops and other content. I was like, I just need to focus my attention on the people that I maybe hurt.
He was thinking about the audience. He continually brings them up throughout the apology. He did focus on them, just in a patronizing way.
I've realized that I need to be crystal clear about what I believe, so there's no room for ambiguity. I am responsible for creating a lot of hurtful and damaging content on this channel, and I've also created a culture of apathy and
again, I think this is like such an overcorrection. It really is not that deep.
and a lot of like cruelty as well. It's also indoctrinated a lot of people.
You could have just left up the old stuff and apologized and been like, hey man, you know, I feel like it was too edgy. It's time for me to get older and mature a little bit. And I don't think that people would have had like the reflex that they had. You know, again, there's always going to be people who are going to be crybabies, annoying people, but you really overcorrected here.
Into thinking that this is an okay way to behave. I've just always had this dumb philosophy that I'm not responsible for, you know, my audience.
And he does try to
and you are to some degree responsible for your audience, for sure.
Take the supposed feelings of his audience into consideration by projecting his apathetic and insecure attitude.
Because I was a nasty, apathetic, insecure person. Now that I don't feel like it represents me.
Why are people angry at him for improving as a person? I'm assuming you just came to the stream. It's because he's overcorrecting. He's not just improving as a person. He's become fucking annoying about it.
And I want to distance myself from it and keep it from, you know, indoctrinating more people.
He even says that video was meant to be a lesson to the people who liked Content Cop.
And for anyone who liked—
I liked Content Cop when I watched it. I thought that was pretty decent.
Those videos, I want this video to be an example and a lesson for you. You can like content, but you can also think that it's irresponsible and it's hurting other people. Just tap into that part of your brain that's saying like, it's done a lot of damage. We can just let it go.
I don't know that Content Cop did a lot of damage, man. I don't know if I agree with that.
So to now frame this as a video that didn't take the fans' feelings into consideration is deceitful. It's very clear that the apology is more focused on sending a message to his audience
I thought that what he was trying to say was he cared less about his fans that liked the content in a good way, and he cared more about the people who received it negatively. But maybe I'm wrong.
Than making an apology for people like Tana. The reason why they'd bother reframing things like this is because he didn't realize just how bad the response would be to this apology. It went over like a lead balloon, and he was already on a losing streak, both literally and metaphorically. Right after this apology may have been the height of the hate towards iDubbbz. Moist Critical talked about it and thought Ian was overreacting by issuing an apology at all. Then Hassan and
Yeah. It's not unreasonable to say.
H3 got involved, making an already controversial moment more heated and prevalent. I don't think they helped iDubbbz at all. I think they made matters worse for him. Even though they came to his defense, at that point they were just pouring gas on the fire.
Well, iDubbbz and Ethan don't exactly have the cleanest, you know. Excuse me, Ethan and Hassan don't exactly have like the cleanest, you know, flow, but especially Hassan, in my opinion.
Hassan and Ethan Klein are probably the
last. You bought this game because of me, thanks, bro.
Last two people who would be able to change the minds of the people who disliked Ian's apology.
For sure.
Looking back at the public perception of all of this, it makes sense that Ian would want to remember things differently, i.e. delude himself. Speaking of deceit, he says in this video that he endorses the things he said on Padilla's podcast.
If you probably just should have left it to Padilla's podcast. Again, you don't have to announce every meaningful change in perspective that you have in its own like explicit video. It gets boring. But
If you guys are at all interested in how I've arrived here, that video gives, you know, a good bit of context and talks about some of my life a little bit.
But as we've seen, he recently claimed that he wasn't in the right headspace to be issuing corrections.
And I really wasn't trying too hard to even correct that when it was coming out.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I'm just like, I already felt out of my element, and I was like, oh man, I don't feel like I'm at all ready to be making like, or issuing corrections.
So how was he in the right element to renounce a majority of his work and double down on his stance against his old fans for months, yet wasn't responsible or level-headed enough to correct the things he was saying? I guess he could just be admitting that he was being irrational, unhinged, and resentful at the time, but
no, I think that, I think that he just needs to shut the fuck up about his goddamn fucking every day he feels like he made a new change in this fucking self-discovery, and like he just needs to stop. You can, he like just shut the fuck up about it. Stop bringing it up. Stop trying to articulate the exact ways in which you're bad. I think he said the same thing over and over again, and he feels like people just aren't getting it. And it's like, no, we get it. Like you're overcorrecting. Like when I saw this motherfucker go onto that podcast with that black woman, and I told this earlier, like what was it, Jinxie or just a Jinx or just a Minx or no, these are not even close to people. That fucking black guy that did like the reactions where he was like, oh, and he would just make faces instead of actually react. When some woman was like, oh, you were being racist by criticizing that guy. There's so many other reactors. And he's like, yeah, I was being racist. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Most React content now, at least the good type, is where it's transformative reactions through people like actually giving commentary. That guy was just looking at a screen and laughing and not actually giving any changes. So it's like, be like, yeah, you're right, I was being kind of racist for calling him out, but not somebody else. Like, no, you're not, dude. Like, he's nothing like an Asmongold. Like, that's when I was like, Jesus Christ, like, you really are overcorrecting. It's like, holy fuck.
But this was
Jinx, it's just, his name's just Jinx. Okay. The black guy.
Supposed to be Ian's most mature and transparent moment, a signal to the fans that they can behave better, just like him. None of this makes any sense. He also talks about his old content as if it were this devastatingly evil act.
I know that this apology isn't enough. I've clearly done
Yeah, it really wasn't that bad. Like, again, overcorrection, you know?
a lot of damage. I shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. This is something that I should live the rest of my life with.
Okay.
And I expect to. I've profited off of this bigoted content.
This guy's acting like he was a fucking slave master.
For years.
He's trying to make his audience understand the gravity of making fun of people on the internet, which comes off as patronizing.
I don't think he's trying to be patronizing. I think he actually believes this. That's almost the scarier part. Like, holy fuck, dude, relax.
Plenty of people who know how to tease and mock others in a tasteful way, and plenty of people who could benefit from developing those social skills more. Not being able to joke or take a joke can be a problem.
I have always thought that I would.
The general message of like, hey, I wish I was a little more sensitive is fine, but he's taking it. It's like, what I did is unforgivable. It's like, relax, dude, shut the fuck up.
Was an empathetic person. I think only in these past couple of years have I gained the ability empathy, and I'm very ashamed to admit that. It sounds really pathetic to say at the age of 32 I've acquired empathy, and I've realized it because I just like can't help myself but feel for other people's pain and suffering.
Oh, he's become an empath, guys.
Now, and I just want you guys to know that you can unlock ability empathy if you experience more life. It might take you getting hurt a little bit, but it's worth it. It is so worth it.
This is like a 5-year-old's idea of empathy. You develop empathy by turning off your inner monologue, listening to others, paying attention to their tone of voice and body language to pick up on emotions they're not explicitly expressing, learning to recognize their patterns of behavior to better understand them.
Well, no, I think what he's trying to say is like, hey, you'll develop empathy as you... It takes a lot. It takes more to develop like a true empathy. It takes a while. Like him saying that he hasn't developed empathy until he got into like a relationship, that's normal. That's like kind of a normal thing to like develop more empathy as you find somebody that you respect 50-50, especially if you're like a guy and they're a girl, or vice versa, because you'll start to have empathy for like the other, sex. I mean, men and women are different. So it takes a little bit more to understand how those how differences in the way that people tend to feel or experience different things. Like men and women tend to feel and experience and express things differently from each other. So the general point there is not wrong. Again, it's just overcorrecting.
It doesn't come from getting hurt or becoming more sullen. I think Ian confused empathy with resignation and getting out of people's
No, he's right about this one. Okay.
way, because he didn't become some symbol of compassion. He simply became less effective as an entertainer. The people who he was apologizing to didn't seem to think this was necessary. Something that an empathetic and understanding person would have picked up on.
I guess he posted this apology video apologizing for like a bunch of things he did in the past, one of them being the video he made with me or like to me. And I was like, damn, I just never expected that. And I don't know how I feel about it, because and I don't know how to say this. I'm not talking about anything in regards of the things he said, but I'm more so just talking about like his actions to me. Like, him showing up to my show, him putting me on blast, him inevitably making me kind of canceled and lose subscribers and have to apologize and all that type of stuff. I kind of think I like deserved that. And maybe that's like dark, like to
not really dark. It's probably had a positive association with getting canceled because you were able to come out the other side, better off.
Say, but like, I don't feel like I'm owed an apology.
Tana is doing just fine, and so are the other supposed content cop victims. Ricegum didn't seem to care. I think he has a family and kids now.
iDubbbz apologizes for videos he made when he was 27.
Yeah, doesn't he run like an OnlyFans farm? Shouldn't you be criticizing him for that?
Oh yeah, so he made an apology video. He said sorry to like Tana and stuff. I don't know if he said sorry to me though. I don't think he said sorry to everyone.
I don't think he is sorry to him.
That I made content cop videos on. I still don't like the majority of you, and that's fine.
He says
I can recognize that you did not deserve the hate and harassment that
they probably did.
I sent your way. I particularly want to apologize to Tana. Tana, I'm sorry.
Well, hold on. And what about me?
I'm also sorry to all the black viewers in the minority group.
The black viewers is crazy.
Who had to put up with that video and
bro.
Sorry to all the blacks. Sorry. My bad.
I didn't even get an apology, but he gave me a vague apology. He said everyone that I made a vid on, but then he said Tana specifically.
Keemstar didn't seem to care and still has a career in faking drama. Now, Leafy isn't doing too well, but I'm pretty sure that has more to do with stimulant addiction than content cop.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like the people that he used to criticize. I think that's a big criticism people have of him. So.
I have no clue how Jinx is doing these days, but the way he made his reaction videos was so lazy that it was basically content theft. The criticism was deserved, as it was for all of these people. Some of them even understand that the criticism was deserved, and none of them seem to be holding on to this in the same way that iDubbbz is. This apology wasn't made to make the subjects of Content Cop feel better. This was a message to Ian's audience saying, it's not okay to make fun of or criticize people on the internet, and now since I've apologized for the things
I think it's still fun to criticize and make fun of people on the internet, as long as you do it right. You shouldn't just make fun of people because they have like a fucking disability or something, but some people deserve it, bro. So
done and said, you have to stop making fun.
Give him a light ribbing.
Fun of me and my wife.
A very big thing that has sort of altered my view on all of this is just the amount of hate and harassment my wife Anisa has received over the years.
I figure this is as good of a place as any to talk more about the hate towards Anisa. For example, in the Froggy Fresh video iDubbbz made, he mentions the way Sam Hyde insults Anisa.
Anyone who's mentioning the fact—
Yeah, a lot. It's nice that you finally brought that up 20 or 30 minutes after you talk about Sam Hyde.
That Harley trained with Sam Hyde for the year previous, that was before Sam was saying this about my wife.
I don't think so, Anissa. Bitch. Look at Anissa. What an ugly piece of shit. But look how beat she is. Oh, nice jack-o'-lantern teeth.
That's like
I can't wait to see what she looks like when she's 32. Her teeth look like a pumpkin head. Like it's the Anissa Joma hole stretcher. I'm sending this to Anissa's OnlyFans. It goes directly into charity.
Yeah.
Everybody hates him and his wife's.
It is very insulting towards her, yet
yes,
I can't deny that it's hilarious.
Why is it hilarious? I mean, again, like, listen, not to be an asshole, but you're showing your immaturity. Like, as a man, one of the things that you do is you don't insult another man's wife. Especially, like, so I don't really know what to tell you, man. Like, this is, if he didn't disavow Sam Hyde over that, that would have been, there would be no respect to ever be had. Why would you ever try to build a bridge with somebody who's obsessively talking about your wife to try to rile you up? I don't understand.
It's probably the funniest thing Ian's put on his channel in the last few years. It's easy to get behind the hate towards Anisa. In my first video on iDubbbz from over 2 years ago, I said I didn't want to focus on Anisa too much because Ian is his own person who can make his own decisions. I didn't know much about her at the time and wanted to focus on iDubbbz himself, but she started to become more of a part of Ian's career and public image, appearing with him on podcasts, taking more credit for things behind the scenes, attributing his changes to her understanding of the world. The more you see Anisa, the less you can deny that she's been an instrumental part of Ian's downfall.
Sure, and you don't have to sit here and talk about how she's an ugly whore, etc., etc. It doesn't exactly. It's not constructive criticism of her. So
she's an unlikable person trying to make it as an e-celebrity, which is a difficult position to be in.
And I don't like unpredictable people, period. I just don't.
Period.
I need to be on a leash. I would get triggered by any form of abandonment, basically, and I would go into 5-year-old brain, which for him was horrible, obviously. That was like a really...
I was always trying to like logic it out, and I'm like, man, what the hell? She isn't listening to my logic and my reason.
Could not get it to work at all.
So again, prove that I'm actually twisting around what you're saying, and you're not, again, you're not giving examples. You're just claiming that I'm doing this.
I mean, the word fallacy has been brought up a million times.
That's because you've made appeal to popularity fallacies and appeal to nature fallacies. That's why.
Damn, it's tough taking an L to vegan Riz over here.
But it did finally click when she did explain, like, I was going into 5-year-old mode. I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's literally what it
if
was.
If that's what it is, then what am I doing trying to, like, you know,
Logic.
give you a list of, like, things to why it's not a problem or whatever.
I get it. We have different opinions. It's not going to change. Clearly, I'm too stupid to understand what you're saying. In my early relationship with Ian, when something was wrong, his immediate instinct was to find solutions. Like, we can't think about why you're sad or if you're sad or, like, be in the moment. A lot of men, because they weren't allowed to, like, sit in their feelings, and they kind of skip over the empathizing with someone. It doesn't matter what I say. You're just going to...
I'm listening. Look,
Was she like in the political debate sphere at a certain point? Fucking interesting. What an interesting place to start.
I'm honestly listening to you.
You're honestly
Was she a big Destiny enjoyer?
not, and that's the biggest lie that you've given this whole...
I am listening to you.
Fine, we'll get your fucking girlfriend on here. Do I have enough tattoos? Not yet.
I am listening to you.
Fine.
She's like, okay. Gotcha.
We'll get your fucking girlfriend on here. Do I have enough tattoos? Not yet.
I'm saving most of the Anisa stuff for later, but she does keep coming up more and more as the hate towards iDubbbz escalates. There's not a particular incident that I can point to that's solely responsible for the state of Anisa's reputation, and the same can be said for iDubbbz. The OF thing would have garnered some negative attention on its own, sure, but nothing like the hate they've been getting. It's more than just,
that's probably true.
Just that, or even Creator Clash 2. It's been a much slower and grading process. About a month or two later, Ian uploaded a video titled The Harsh Reality of Creator Clash 2, publicly declaring the event a financial failure. $250,000
I don't even know why he would announce this.
Short of raising any money for charity. They did do a stream later to help alleviate things, raising around $100,000 for charity and paying for the $250K out of their own pocket. He addressed—
Oh, okay. Well, at least they got that. So they turned it around.
This is a rumor that they're pocketing money from the event, which I highly doubt happened. It's far more likely that iDubbbz and Anisa were in over their heads and didn't realize just how much responsibility and volatility comes with running an event like Creator Clash, which is to say their incompetence is to blame. They thought selling as many pay-per-views as the year before was a sure thing.
I foolishly thought that the success of last year should be a minimum. You know, a minimum for what we are able to do this year. We did half as well as we did the first year. 50,000 compared to 100,000 the first year.
It's interesting to think that, because you'd imagine that the first one would have done better just on like principle of like, oh, it's a new, fresh new thing. Let's see how it goes.
Even without some of the oversights and the drama of Creator Clash 2, this is such an unrealistic perspective. There's no such thing as a sure thing in business.
Well, that's why he's acknowledging
The harsh reality of Creator Clash 2 is sort of an end of an era. The amount of videos covering iDubbbz started to decrease substantially, and it was around this time I stopped making videos on him as well. The last video I made talking about iDubbbz at all was when he went on Olay's channel, a highly progressive YouTuber. Francesca Ramsey was in the—
Annoying. Let's just be real. Annoying YouTube.
video too, who was known for her role in MTV Decoded, an infamously condescending show. I'm just gonna play some clips so you get an idea of what that was like.
He put my face in videos and called me, you know, a
Shouldn't use that word, guy.
And, you know, said that my work was cancer.
Go look at
It might have been. I don't really know, but it might have been.
the privated videos on the videos, every video you did, every content cop on a Jinx, what you did to you, what you did to all of them, and what was the revenue on those videos, and pay and cuts and checks.
Why would he do that?
Cuts and checks.
I don't have any black friends.
An apology is
That's weird, bro. No black friends. I don't really have friends in general, but black people love me. All black people, they love me. They say I'm one of the good ones. It's incredible stuff.
It's not enough for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think
At least the good ones love me.
there's anything that he can do that will ever be enough.
Yeah. If we had the ability to cancel you, you wouldn't have been successful in the first place.
Yeah, well, thank God you don't, because you're so annoying.
So this is the kind of crowd that iDubbbz is trying to get chummy with. People who are infinitely bitter and say that nothing will ever be enough.
That is true. He's right about that.
People who would have happily ended his career if given the opportunity. People who lie about what videos he did or didn't make. People who have no interest whatsoever in
people who compare that Jinx guy who was like didn't even react to things to every other like reactor now. That's who.
His content, his future, or his well-being. These are the people that iDubbbz has chosen to side with. I welcome opinions about my apology from people in communities whom the apologies were directed at. That is where my care starts and ends. So Ian's disregard for his audience was indeed intentional. It wasn't a mistake or an error in communication like he says on a more recent podcast. He shouldn't be surprised when his fanbase returns an equal lack of care for him or his content. At this point, Ian's reputation as a YouTuber is abysmal. Sure, some people liked the apology, but those were mostly people outside of his initial audience, people who he's failed to attract to his channel, it seems. The content he was putting out—
It would have been fine for him to just make the apology once instead of doing like a weird tour of it and just constantly talking to more and more people about it. Just say your piece and move on, you know?
Out after Creator Clash 2 was some of the most boring, hollow, unimpactful content I've seen in my life, and I've watched a lot of bad content. It just feels lifeless.
But
hey, thank you for the medium gut from Robert Health. Heath? Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
something like the bongos, that's just disgusting hard plastic that sounds like, man, I love these bongos.
Cool
I love music. Yes, I do. This is really cool. Extremely
I mean, iDubbbz, if you want to play World of Warcraft with me, I'll play with you. You know, I've seen you play. He's a weird fucking purist, though. He's like, oh, only Classic WoW. It's like, bro, you probably suck at it. Listen, Classic WoW is cool. You know, it's always nostalgic, but like, here's the hottest take you're ever going to hear. That's not a hot take at all. Classic WoW is easy. Modern WoW is harder, okay? On a micro level. Macro level, Classic WoW is difficult, slow, and can be frustrating. But on a micro level, there's really not a whole lot going on. The dungeons and raids tend to be like easier, not a whole high amount of skill on using your abilities or using your rotation, yada yada yada. Modern WoW is faster, but it's much more difficult on a micro scale. You have to actually be able to play. You'll get fucking carpal tunnel playing Modern WoW. I'm not even kidding. Especially if you're playing like a melee class that's completely GCD locked. So, like, stop coping. Oh, I'm a Classic player because I'm better. No, it's because you're lazy. Okay? You're not... Season of Discovery makes it a little more difficult, but in like a more like, meaningful way, like fun. You know? Stop being a fucking WoW purist. You know what I mean? Go do some Mythic dungeons. Alright? I don't know what else to tell you, bro. I like both iterations of the game, don't get me wrong, but like we need to stop pretending. I mean, when fucking you got nowadays, you have people hitting 60 really quick on like Classic and then beating Ragnaros in like a fucking week. You know, clearly it's not the hardest thing in the world, you know, compared to like Mythic level dungeons, which take an extraordinary amount of coordination to engage with.
safe, but they're also extremely boring.
I'm just saying, like, you know, it's cool to only like one of them over the other one, but stop being a fucking purist about it as if, you know, what you like is better. You know what I mean?
Surprisingly, this was the good content he was putting out at the time. He started a second channel called Maximum Damage with another YouTuber, Dax Flame. Although it's been
Dax Flame is a funny guy, man. He's pumping on TikTok, at least recently. God bless him.
a year since there's been a Dax upload, so all that's really happening at that channel right now is the iDubbbz and Anisa podcast. She ruined my career.
Dax has an interesting story too, because I remember seeing that like he talks about how he struggled a lot as a content creator, and he's just starting to pick up traction now. And I think he's in his 30s, maybe even 40s. He's a funny guy, you know. And it's never just a straight path upwards, man. It takes its ups and downs, brothers. Ups and downs.
Career. She Ruined My Career is a weekly podcast where the Jomas talk about, well, practically nothing.
And it's a dumb podcast to be making. The Jomas. Is that Anisa's last name? That's funny. That's a funny dig at iDubbbz. Did he take her last name? There's no way he took. If he took her last name, I think I would lose all respect for him. I'm sorry. I know that might sound shitty, but I could never respect a man who takes his wife's last name, unless you like, you know, you want to be all progressive and whatever, and you want to have both last names. Like, all right, whatever. But if you flat out take your wife's last name, bro, I don't think I could. I don't know, man. That's the conservative. That's the trucker in me. He took her last name. Dude, that's crazy. Sorry, this is like purely emotional. That's pathetic. Wait, did he keep his last name too? Did he keep his last name too? Did he at least keep his last name? Did he at least keep his last name, dude? Like, oh, you know, Ian. you know, John Madingleberry. Oh my God, he didn't take her last name. I mean, he didn't keep his last name. Dude, I don't know, man. This is fucking pathetic. I'm sorry. This is illogical, I guess. His name is Ian Kane. I guess it's his middle name, and it used to be Washburn. And now it's Ian Kane Johnma. It'd be like one thing if it was like Ian Kane Johnma or whatever, Washburn. I'd be like, okay, I kind of get it. Bro, fucking seriously? I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just regressive, but I think that's fucking pathetic. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a little too old for this, but I think that's fucking pathetic. What's pathetic? Take your wife's last name? Bro, I don't know what to tell you. I cannot even articulate why I think it's pathetic. I just think it is, and I'm just letting you know. That's it. So, I'm sorry, dude. Maybe his like mom or dad used to beat the fuck out of him or something, and like he never wanted the last name. Maybe there's context. If he has the context of like, oh, my family are horrible people, then I'd be like, okay, you could save that. You can save that. But I feel like it's like if you want to be progressive, do both last names or something. I don't know, man. That's just fucking crazy. I don't know, man. I just feel like that's fucking crazy, brother. That's wild. And what's funny is he's like, oh, I'm going to take my wife's last name. Feminism. You didn't take your wife's last name. You took your wife's dad's last name. Because my father's last name, I removed it from my thing, but I use my mother's last name. I use my mother's last name, which is her father's, real technically. But like, I didn't take my wife's. If she wanted to keep hers and be like, you know, blah 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 blah, as long as she had mine attached to it, that would have been fine. But yeah, man, I don't know. All right. Whatever, man. All right, relax with the grooming stuff. I don't think that she fucking groomed the guy. Relax. You guys are taking it too far. How old is she? That's crazy. She's 31. How old is he? He's 33. Wait, she's older than him. I mean, he's older than her. Why do you guys keep saying that she's older? What are you talking about? Why does everybody keep saying that? I don't know. Whatever.
Think somewhere between a long drawn-out conversation with your neighbor and staring at a clock for an hour. It is the antithesis of content.
Oh, I wrote down here, the U.S. simps are coping that they have most medals, but the majority are bronze.
Is that a real thing? Is that happening?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, most medals, wrote down here, the U.S. simps are coping that they have most medals, but the majority are bronze.
I don't know the context, but overall, if you look at the data, the United States has more gold medals than every other country has medals, like, combined. Not every other country, but like China, we have more gold medals than China has medals in general. That's like, I watched a TikTok about that recently. Maybe they were wrong, but so just to be clear, suck a fart, bitch.
Is that a real thing? Is that happening?
Yeah, I've seen some comments about.
The only people that I can think of who might enjoy this, unironically, are H3 wine moms, the kind of people who want to feel like they understand internet culture better than they actually do. I don't think iDubbbz has ever had any luck with that demographic, but I'm just guessing. Let's talk about the title of the podcast, She Ruined My Career. It's supposed to be a tongue-in-cheek way of owning the haters who think Anisa has played a role in Ian's downfall, but it comes off...
To me, it just comes off as like they're focusing too much on this criticism and they just need to move the fuck on.
...as petty and desperate. That's not taking into consideration how the show is doing view-wise. It's miserable. Since it began almost a year ago, it's only declined in viewership. The first episode got 60K views over the course of 10 months. During the next 5 or so episodes, the viewership would decline by up to 50% per episode.
Which makes sense when you start with something new. People will tune in and then they might not stick around.
And they'd struggle to break 10K views from that point on. Episode 40 got less than 1,000 views in 7 hours. It's surreal to see someone with over 7 million subs on their main channel struggle to reach a few thousand views on their podcast within a full day. Even though the title is supposed to be facetious, she really has had a terrible impact on Ian's career. They wanted to make a fool out of anyone who said...
No, I think it's his response to different things. Again, like we were talking earlier, I think he's a bit of a pushover and she steamrolls him and he just doesn't stick up for himself. It's kind of on him.
Anisa ruined things, only to end up looking foolish themselves. Most of the show can be summed up with 5 different types of moments. Awkward nothings, embarrassment, sometimes to themselves, sometimes to each other, Anisa being quirky for attention.
I think that we should normalize people mixing their last names, maybe. It's like you take both your last name and your partner's last name and you mix them together in something cool. Like the Twilight did Renesmee, which was it was dog shit. It was terrible. How about that?
Old drama and the haters, and tattoos. You're now up to speed on a vast majority of the podcast. Some clips got picked up by other channels, like the OF shaving thing.
I'm realizing that I'm caring less about body hair. Like women with like armpit hair.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hot. I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of like body hair. Armpit hair is kind of hot to me now. I like saggy titties. I like gray hair. I don't know, man. I'm just getting older. Things change, brother. I become a little bit of a dog, you know?
I think that's my fault.
Arm hair.
Like 4 years ago, I just stopped shaving as often. And I think you've just had to get used to it.
No.
It's kind of normal. I mean, you know, don't always have time to do everything.
Oh, that's not true.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You shave all the time.
No, I only shave when I'm doing OnlyFans.
No, I think
Well, don't you consistently do that?
your perception of like what is shaven and what is not shaven is different.
Okay.
The sort of thing usually won't gain much traction, but Ian's reputation was still in the gutter, so people made videos about it. He was once known for making some of the most loved and respected content on the platform. Now he has a Nothing Burger podcast that gives people a strange look into Ian and Anisa's relationship. Apparently, that's what they were going for.
I guess that's what I've realized I want to get out of the podcast is just people understanding what our dynamic is finally.
Oh, that's true. That's a great point.
Once again, this doesn't make sense. The people who
don't make fun of me, dude.
who were still on the iDubbbz train at this point weren't interested in learning about their relationship. Just like Ian's apology, they
probably, well, this thing is, I think that people would be down to learn about the relationship. It's just that, no, not as many people really like iDubbbz anymore. He really has kind of pushed away any fan that's left. I think that I'm probably a representation of the more reasonable criticisms of him, and it's just like, you know, I think that's the general public's sentiment is like, you know. Plus, it doesn't seem like they do any put any meaningful amount of work into making their podcast successful. Like, are they making clips for TikTok and stuff? Like, I don't even know.
Ruined My Career prioritizes proving the haters wrong above all else. The production itself is an issue too. There have been multiple instances where they think they're recording an episode when it turns out they're not, only to redo or scrap the material.
What? How did they fuck that up?
Already recorded this episode, so this is like a re-recording of it.
Yeah.
If that makes any kind of sense.
Well, we forgot to hit the record button, so we were just a little
we didn't really record it.
Oh, true.
That's it's a bit rough there, buddy.
We just thought we did.
It was a podcast for God, for God's eyes only.
Oh my God.
Did they not have a TikTok or something? Like, why aren't they trying to get themselves out there on like Instagram and shit? What the fuck? Are they dumb? I don't see anything in there. Sorry, don't mean to be too rude. I'm just like, why would you not take advantage of that?
Blind people.
It's almost like they want their podcast to not get traction because they're afraid of the criticism. That's what it kind of feels like. Okay.
Yeah.
The main issue with production isn't in the video or audio quality or their set. It's a lack of preparation. They claim to have notes of some kind for most of their shows, but I don't understand how they can do a reasonable amount of prep and have the show turn out so empty.
This is a good way to start because this is going to be my very first podcast without notes, which means...
Really?
You're doing the opposite of what the angry comments want.
Yes. Unprepared. Completely.
Yeah, what else is new?
There's a bigger part of that problem, though.
Today, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt.
Oh, because we're going to Canada.
And I'm wearing the same thing from last episode because we filmed these 20 minutes apart.
Fuck up, Dane. No one would know unless you fucking said that shit.
Why would you let him... What would you keep that in then?
Well, I'm wearing the same pants and socks.
If you didn't quite catch that, Dane was basically saying that they record the podcasts in batches. I'm not
I mean, they might. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to do. I don't think it really necessarily matters that much.
Sure how often they do this, but it would explain a lot. I think the reason why iDubbbz puts any time into half-assing the second channel at all.
Well, it sounds like they might have done that because they're going to Canada, and they're not going to have time to continue the schedule. It doesn't seem like a big deal.
All is because it allows him to avoid the much bigger task of getting his main channel back off the ground. Because he's made this wrong connection between him being critical and edgy and people hating his wife, his creativity has been stifled. He'd rather spend time distracting himself with side projects than undergo the task of fixing his career.
I mean, it's possible that he's just over his career and wants to just do something else and doesn't care about the money because he's got plenty of it. It's all possible.
Like, this is, I think what frustrates me about it is, like, it's all like good advice if
you cared.
Well, basically, no, it's like in a vacuum, it's good advice, right?
Yeah. He also said that
the reflection was there because I didn't care about it.
Yeah, we do this. This is supposed to be just a casual.
This is the low effort thing.
This is the low effort casual thing. Most people don't give a shit.
If the low effort thing isn't getting views, is bad for your image, and is causing you stress, then stop doing it and focus on something that is worth your full attention. The entertainment industry is more competitive and oversaturated.
Just help your wife do OnlyFans. Or your husband. At that point, take her last fucking name, bro.
Than ever. If someone like iDubbbz makes a podcast, people expect some level of care, effort, coordination, an idea or premise that goes beyond, let's send a message to the haters.
Well, I mean, podcasts tend to be just generally less, like much lower effort than like actual content creation, generally, it's the content he was making. Again, I don't think it's the low effort that's doing him in. I think, like, he's just not likable anymore, man. He's overcorrected. It doesn't even seem as mature anymore. It's just fucking... took his wife's last name. It's just like, I don't know, man. I think that's pretty much what it is. Because as much as people criticize Ethan, people still have an interest in Ethan Klein. And he's engaged in a solid content strategy to maintain his success, through the ups and downs. But iDubbbz just hasn't done that in any capacity.
Not trying is the flimsiest excuse they could have possibly come up with. Yeah, it's supposed to suck. It's not supposed to be respected or successful. Okay, Jomas, sure.
If someone is like criticizing me for something I consider to be like pretty mundane and like not worth, not that big of a deal, like I take that very like personally, and I don't see it just as a bit of criticism or a bit of advice. I don't want to navigate this middle ground area where.
Imagine there is a world though where fucking iDubbbz like he just divorces his wife, he takes his other fucking last name back, and he just goes on an absolute tirade. How crazy would that be?
I have to use my own like judgment on a case-by-case basis of like what is worth it for me.
Ian is going to have to get past that one way or another. The more personally he takes these small remarks, the worse things are going to get. Any content creator should approach comments and criticism the same way they would look at bad weather. Acknowledge it, but don't take it personally. I know there are other clips to compare and laugh at from their podcast, although they probably wouldn't tell us much about what iDubbbz has done to ruin his career. The entire premise of the podcast and how unengaging it is are the main issues here. There are no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and to go through how bad each and every episode is would take way too much time. If you want to take a look at how bad it gets, check out Kino Casino's coverage. PPP deserves a Purple Heart for clipping that hazardous waste, or whatever they give Canadians. If you make a show directed towards the haters, there's a good
I think they just give them syrup, no?
chance the fans won't bother to show up. This isn't the only time iDubbbz had that sort of idea either.
Just generally some people just complaining about like new content or whatever. I want to speak to them. It would be such a good documentary to just meet these people in person and not like pass any judgment. The whole purpose is basically, I mean, if the audience wants to pass judgment, they can. I want to meet like call it like my 5 biggest haters or something like that, and just, in person, see if they, have the same energy or like what they're, even just seeing what their lives are like.
This is so weird. Why are you still considering making content about your old stuff that you're claiming to want to get away from? Because it seems like the tone of this is like, I want to talk to my 5 haters and prove to everybody that I'm right about them. They're fucking losers. Like, even like to see what they would say to me in person. Like, I don't know, man. Like, just move on. Just shut the fuck up about it. Do something else, dude. Enough is enough.
I think it would be fascinating to get a little window into like a random.
I don't think anybody thinks that.
Fucking person online.
I'm not sure where this clip comes from, but I think it's telling. iDubbbz didn't develop empathy as much as he started to direct his frustration towards his haters instead of other online figures. By the time he would call out another YouTuber, he had lost his edge. This brings us to the Cartnarks video. By the time it came out, there hadn't been a content cop released in 6 years.
I remember that video. It's gonna be kind of weird. I don't know.
Cartnarks video is probably the closest thing to Content Cop we've gotten as of late, and it's bad. Cartnarks is a YouTube channel that tells people to put their grocery cart back instead of leaving it stray in the parking lot.
Yeah, it's silly. Sometimes he goes a little overboard, but at the end of the day, the criticism from iDubbbz just seemed to be kind of stupid. I remember watching that video.
Here are some of the clips that iDubbbz used in his video.
Dinged car doors, spots taken up, grocery prices raised sky high because employees have to go out and spend their time hunting down carts.
Well, just to be clear, they're not raising sky high. And then you can make an argument that there are people that actually have jobs because people don't put their carts back, which is actually kind of fair. I mean, you're killing a job by putting your cart back. I still do it, just to be clear, but you know, you're creating a job if you don't put your cart back, guys. Let's just be clear.
We are publicly shaming those dicks who don't take back their shopping carts. Cart arts, you curved your cart. You didn't take it back to the cart corral where it belonged.
What the fuck?
Are you okay? That's the second curbing, by the way. No, I'm not okay, you But I'm a nice guy.
You just gotta leave the. I think that the only time that the cart narcs really goes too far is if he puts your cart like behind you so you can't leave. At the end of the day, that would be the only thing. Like if he throws a fucking magnet on your car, like you could just drive away and take it off later. You know what I mean?
You left your cart here like a lazy bones.
Yeah?
What
are you bothering us for?
Because you left your cart out.
So what?
So that's gonna block someone's spot.
I don't care.
But the problem is we've sort of graduated from that.
See, that attitude's getting you a hood magnet of shame, sir. So the hood magnet, since that was a gotcha. Another one in progress over here. Hold on. I'll be back in the spot. Let me get you another one right there.
This is the kind of...
That'd be fucking hilarious, bro. If I saw, honestly, if I ever saw this cart narc guy, I would probably intentionally not park my cart because I would have thought it was funny.
Stuff that iDubbbz is calling out these days. For this sort of content, Cartnarks is pretty tame. Eric Andre has easily been more of a menace than Cartnarks, and calling him out wouldn't make sense either. The guy is just asking people to take their cart back and putting a harmless magnet on their car if they don't. But what are you gonna do when the Cartnark calls you lazy bones? Are you strong enough to recover from that?
What we do is we narc out people who are being big old lazy bones and not taking their carts back. You're being a lazy bone.
And I do have a handicap, actually.
Is your disability lazy bones-itis?
Okay.
There's a lot of people who say like, yeah, this ain't so bad. The cart narc, he's hitting people with the white people insults. What's so wrong with that?
Yeah, he's just being silly guy.
It's like, dude, if someone called you lazy bones, would you not feel fucking awful? Especially
Not really. I wouldn't give a shit.
if you're being lazy.
Okay.
That shit is like a level 9 white people insult. Those hurt.
I think he's trying to be funny.
I think one of the worst insults that I've ever received in my life was a white person insult, and it was just a really well-placed, no shit Sherlock. Like, if someone hits you with a no shit Sherlock at the right moment
My favorite white person insult is? I can't tell you.
in time, you can't recover.
We did create it, though. I don't know why everybody says that. It's our word. Who made it up? Who came up with that? I'm just fucking around.
Recover from that.
Unless you're a battle-hardened sociopath, then you will buckle under the pressure of white people insults. You will not recover. He makes some other points like when people ask the Cartnark to leave them alone, he doesn't leave. But neither does the person they're confronting, and they can leave whenever they want. Ian also says that...
Yeah, unless he does something to, like, entrap you, this really doesn't matter.
Unhinged basically means the same thing as disabled, so this guy's just dunking on the mentally ill, apparently.
Yeah.
Kind of based to dunk on the mentally ill, am I right, guys?
It's very easy to call these people unhinged. Another word you can use is disabled. Their brain isn't working like yours or mine.
I don't think everybody that's annoying about their carts is disabled, they're bud.
For some people, they feel like they have to answer the door.
No, you can't attribute...
I don't.
all unhinged behavior to mental illness. That just enables healthy people to act unhinged under the guise of mental illness. The thing I find...
I mean, if some of the people were, like, legitimately, mentally disabled in some capacity, then that's a reasonable argument. But I don't think that most of these people are mentally disabled or something.
The most interesting about this video is the irony poisoning argument that iDubbbz makes.
If you're gonna, record someone at their fucking lowest and, like, antagonize people to the point where they blow up at you, we should at least know, some of your history. He's able to do the, like, irony poisoning thing where a lot of people who are watching it are like, oh, it's just jokes. It's just jokes. But he's like, no, actually, I'm very serious about this. Like, on his radio program, they have, like, a segment where they're talking about how he loves calling the cops on people.
And of course I called the cops, and of course they didn't show at least the 10 minutes that I was there. We called the cops on these people, or else they'll keep doing it. Panhandling, which is against the law, blocking the sidewalk, which is against the law, drinking in public, which is definitely against the law. And
what is he referring to?
I called the cops. You gotta
arrest him! I think he was suggesting calling the cops for someone who was panhandling. So it isn't surprising.
I don't know what panhandling is. About homeless people? I mean, I don't know.
That he
maybe I need more context.
Also cares about the shopping carts going in their place.
That point doesn't really fit here. The Cartnark admits that he does care about this, and most people think that putting your cart back is a good thing to do. Not putting your cart back can be characterized as lazy, so where's the irony? I guess the concept of a Cartnark could be considered ironic, but I don't see how asking someone to put back their cart would be. Putting your cart back is a pretty basic and universal standard. I think the reason why iDubbbz makes this point is because it's...
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily. I mean, I do. I think you probably should, but again, every supermarket, most except for like Aldi, has people that go around and put the carts back because it's not necessarily a universal standard, you know? For me, like, I'll put the cart back if there's a cart corral accessible. But if there's one that's not reasonably accessible, I'll just throw it up on the curb. I don't really give a shit. So
it's what he was trying to criticize Sam Hyde for, a criticism that didn't quite land with a lot of his audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what happens when you deal with someone who like uses like harassment and uses people as entertainment and the prop for the comedy and the fun. I could casually just like imply that I'm talking about a particular person,
In the comments.
and the fans are just like, "You want me to do what?
I
You want me to do what? I can go. I could go over there right now,
Yeah.
and post some shit. I'm doing it. I did it. I posted 10 comments.
Yeah.
Not like pass any judgment. The whole purpose is basically, I mean,
the way Aldi works is you have to like use a quarter to get a cart, and then you put the quarter when you get your quarter back when you put your cart back, right? So it makes it so people will just put their cart back to get their quarter back.
and if the audience wants to pass judgment, they can.
The Cartnarks video was received horribly, and I think it's clear why. Their content is relatively innocuous, and iDubbbz is playing it up to be something worse than it is.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not everyone who experiences rage or has an unhinged moment is automatically disabled or mentally ill. Some people just...
My disability is my anger problems, guys.
...have bad attitudes.
That sort of like flippant behavior makes me want to it makes me want to be violent. It makes me want to be very violent.
We're starting to get into the stuff that's happened in the last few months. Along with She Ruined My Career, they have a Patreon exclusive podcast called The Bog. In the
Wait, why don't they just do The Bog then?
15th episode, they talk a lot about Creator Clash, Sam Hyde, and some other old drama.
Why? Why do they keep bringing all this old shit up?
Other YouTubers started to catch wind of it and made some videos about it. I've already played quite a few clips from this, but I want to play one over again to make another point. It's about Creator Clash 2.
We couldn't even pay back what we had like put on the table to put on the event.
Yeah.
Like, was such a emotional gut punch that I feel like I'm never going to get over.
It's been over a year since Creator Clash 2. I know it must have been tough to face the music on that one, but I don't see
they're probably not going to make a 3, it seems like.
Any effort to move on. I see two people who can't help but dwell on the past. They've been holding on to all of the negative things surrounding them over the last few years with the hopes that a free win is right around the corner. The only realistic option they have is to let it go. No amount of complaining or revision is going to sway public opinion in their favor. Relentless defiance towards their old audience is only digging their grave faster. Here's another clip which I think is telling.
And they think that this again is me like pushing, but this wasn't even my idea. I tried to quit it. Honestly, I've tried to quit this podcast 4 times, and Ian keeps going no, which I'm thankful. I'm glad that you're not letting me quit it. I think that it's important, but I want like it makes me so mad that like people think that this is me. Like I'm like, oh, I need to be in everything.
Yeah.
All the time. I don't.
No.
Anisa tried to quit the podcast 4 times. If that's really the case, Ian might be keeping her there just to try and prove the haters wrong. Look, you can't...
Maybe. That's possible. I mean, I guess we don't really know why. Maybe he just enjoys making a cringy podcast with his wife. Or his husband, I don't know.
Can't quit. If you quit now, people will continue to see me as incompetent and aimless, and they'll keep doubting the strength of our relationship. If you quit now,
it is a little bit of low-cow behavior, huh?
We spent trying to prove the haters wrong will be
true, kind of based.
For nothing. I could be wrong, but it fits perfectly. Why else would they keep doing something that neither of them care about? Because they're too dug in to dare change course. A sort of sunk cost fallacy, if you will. Next, we have Anisa's meltdown on Twitch. She's probably had some other incidents like this one on stream, but similar to that episode
I don't really understand the whole meltdown. It seems like they talk way too much about this stuff, about all their past and everything, in such an unproductive way. It's not like I'll lightly bring it up every once in a while, it's for context when I think it's relevant, but they go on like whole podcast episodes about it. It's like, holy fuck.
The Bog, this is something that a good chunk of YouTubers wound up talking about, with good reason too.
Commentary YouTubers have no idea what it is to work a normal job, let alone put on a whole event.
Yeah, well, she's never really worked a normal job either, so... to be clear. And I remember the criticism I had with this is not even just about the job, it's about the responsibility that goes along with the job. You might let's say you work a normal job, right? As an 18-year-old. There's a difference between working like a normal job as an 18-year-old with no real life responsibilities versus working a normal job as a 30-year-old who has to pay for his house, like rent, food, this, that, and the other thing. Because usually when you're 18, you're less mature. And it doesn't really seem like she's ever really necessarily worked in a particularly meaningful capacity from what I've seen. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know. It doesn't really seem like it. So.
Okay? You have no clue. You don't even know what it's like to clock in and have someone breathe down your neck. I know a lot of them have never worked a real job. I know that for a fact. And if you have, you worked there for a week and you cried and you quit.
Even in the most understandable circumstances, this is a pretty cliche remark. When someone like Anisa says it, it's laughably embarrassing. Being a successful YouTuber is less labor-intensive and a lot more appealing than most jobs. However, it still takes some combination of effort, know-how, charisma, awareness, creativity, consistency, or thick skin, depending on what kind of content you're making. So when Anisa complains about commentary YouTubers not knowing what it's like to work a real job, she fails to realize that she's currently making much lazier and thoughtless content than the people she's going off on. Plus, something tells me that Anisa would have panic attack after panic attack if she had to work in customer service these days.
I would rather die than phone someone.
She also went in on Rusty Cage, a YouTuber known for music, knives, and a lemonade stand. Here, Anisa is talking about an incident with him at Creator Clash 2.
I know that you would f***ing cry if I said something to you in real life. I know you would cry.
I know you'd cry. I know you'd fucking cry, dude.
Oh, because I've done it to one of you fuckers in real life, and you have cried. You cried and apologized to me, and you even said that I made you feel like a bitch. He was not supposed to get in. The reason why he got in was because he happened to say, by accident, Justin said I could get in. They gave him a wristband, so he got in. There was like a Free Froggy Fresh sign that like made it to the front of the walkout of Ian's walkout, and he like tweeted the picture. No, it wasn't Brandon Buckingham. It was fucking I always call him Rusty Spoon, but I think his name's Rusty Cage.
At the beginning of the video, Lemon and I had made pro Froggy Fresh signs, one of which made its way down to the floor of the Creator Clash arena. YouTuber Rusty Cage took a photo of the signs and posted it to Twitter with the caption, "Uh-oh," and was subsequently confronted by Anisa. Let's hear that story from him.
I paid money, I'm on the floor seats, and I see like some shenanigans going down.
I mean, I feel like just listen, I already said that I understand why they had to get rid of Froggy Fresh, but at that point, like, there's no reason to bother like trying to criticize other people for that. It's Froggy Fresh, it's not Sam Hyde. Froggy Fresh isn't, to my understanding, banned from the event. Like, just let them fucking let people express themselves at that point and just be like annoyed with it. You know, don't like letting yourself get fucking worked up over it. I mean, that's possibly what they want in the first place. It's just stupid though. Like, why let yourself get worked up? If they want to say that, let them. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Did she really confront somebody over it? Like, just be annoyed alone. Like, it doesn't. You don't have to get fucking worked up over everything.
Take a photo of it. It's just people holding up a sign. It said Froggy did nothing wrong. Like,
seemingly innocuous.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a stupid sign. It's not a big deal. Like, who cares? Let them fucking express themselves.
Right. I go to this like after event, and Anisa comes up to me. She comes up and says, "That tweet was really not cool," and I just apologize. I felt kind of like a bitch. I was like, "Why the fuck did I apologize? What am I apologizing for? I don't even know this person. That's really not cool." Honestly, Anisa, it was very cool.
He snuck into the party. So Ian wasn't around, much like right now, which is why I'm doing this right now. Ian wasn't around. He was somewhere else. And I saw that fucker. I saw him waiting in line for free alcohol, and I was like, absolutely not. I just put my hand on his shoulder, right? I leaned over, and I said, "Hey man, what you did yesterday, really fucking uncool, actually." He was like, like, he was shocked.
Yeah, probably, because it's like, why are you so worked up about it? I'd be shocked too. Like, what the fuck, who cares?
And it clearly got to him, because he ended up in like some interview later saying that it made him feel like a bitch. Why would you admit that?
You might realize this doesn't line up too well with the new, wholesome, empathetic direction of the iDubbbz brand and Maximum Damage channel. When Anisa talks about the way she confronted Rusty Cage, she looks very satisfied with herself. Strange that this is the kind of moment that she cherishes and relishes in.
So Ian wasn't around, much like right now, which is why I'm doing this right now. This is the truth, okay? Ian keeps me on a leash, okay? And I'm okay with that, because I need to...
I never smile. That's what she's saying right now.
Be on a leash.
It probably doesn't make Ian's job of reviving his career any easier when he's also on Anisa patrol and containment. Imagine having to worry about your public image every time you go out of town because your wife might start acting unhinged on the internet or
kind of true, yeah.
Start spilling tea related to your career.
I don't know. Yeah. It's hard. I thought going to therapy would actually make me want to get off the internet. Like, I thought, like, I would go to therapy and I'd be like, oh, of course, like, I need to get off the internet. But for some reason, like, therapy has made me want to, like, come back to the internet. I love doing this. I love talking. I love riffing. I love entertaining. I loved who I was career-wise before I stepped foot into the iDubbbz community. I loved that. I was so happy in that aspect of my life, in my career. And I gave it up because I thought at the time that that was the right thing to do. I thought that it would stop people from, like, obsessively, I don't know. I thought it was the right thing to do. It's weird. Going back to therapy has made me realize how much I don't want to, like, let that go.
There's some anime.
You know, here's my thing. Therapy's great. Keep it to yourself. I just feel like you're talking. I think this is probably the biggest issue. They just talking about everything over and over and over and over again. How many times do we need to see like an iDubbbz and Anisa reflection piece about their behavior in the past? You know what I mean? Like, shut the fuck up. It's time to just fucking move on. Stop talking about it. Just shut up. I mean, not to be rude, but you're not going to ever be the life advice channel where people are going to be like, oh, wow, these people have a lot of stuff. There's a lot I can learn from these YouTubers.
My people are no strangers to voices.
Oh yeah, well I don't care.
Animosity between iDubbbz and Anisa regarding their career paths. They have significant creative differences which are bleeding through now that they're making a lot more content together. Instead of trying to keep their images separate, they tried to merge them into this gray, flavorless paste. It would be wise for them to try and separate their brands and careers from each other's, and it would probably do wonders for their self-esteem. The issue is that they've made the names iDubbbz and Anisa intertwine. It would take a lot of effort and ingenuity to successfully distance their content from one another.
I mean, all they have to do is make content people give a shit about again, and it would be fine. But they seem to get in this like this loop of just constantly talking about old shit over and over and over again.
But guess what? If you took Anisa seriously on any of that, congratulations, you just got pranked. It was an elaborate ruse, you fool. Or at least this is what she tries to claim on the following episode of She Ruined My Career.
So for those of you who don't know, I started streaming again. So when I was a popular streamer, and I'm...
Was she ever popular? I'm just curious. I have no idea.
I guarantee you, all popular streamers do this. You have to like tap into your lizard brain a bit. And when you have a thought or a feeling, no matter how like dumb, like the second thought that happens, you have to ignore it, no matter what it is. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Doesn't really matter. You have to go with the...
Yeah, I have that when it comes to me saying bigoted slurs. And maybe I shouldn't have made that joke.
First, like,
I haven't played League in a while, so
lizard brain thought, and then you gotta like amp it up. I feel like giving a little rant, and I knew that if anyone was going to like clip and share it, it would be the like, no offense, commentary community, but the bottom of the barrel commentary community, the ones that like won't even show their face and shit, and
just keep talking about them. Stop talking about them.
Are like playing Subway Surfers or whatever the fuck they're doing. And
it's called World of Warcraft, bitch. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
And so I was.
I don't know if they play Subway Surfers.
What's the one with the knife?
Oh, so they surf.
They surf.
Surfing.
Oh, it's Surf and CS, probably Go or whatever the newest one is.
Call of Duty, or not Call of Duty, Counter-Strike surfing maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. But and so I was specifically talking about them and going on like a little like fun little rant.
You're just kind of giving them more and more and more and more attention though, so.
Because back in the day when, you know, that you want to get clipped, you want to get shared. Negative, positive, more often.
I don't think that this is true. I don't think, because what it sounds like she's just saying school's hell. What the fuck? I think what she's trying to say is like, oh, I want to get clipped, so I decided to do that. No, you didn't. You got angry and you got fucking worked up, and now you're coping and saying that you wanted to get clipped. I don't believe that you actually wanted to get clipped. I don't believe it at all, to be absolutely honest with you.
Negative clips are getting shared. I just wanted to see if I could still do it.
Cool.
I want to like be able to give into those things because I think that's what like makes a good streamer.
That makes no sense. The story she told about Rusty Cage was real, her hatred towards commentary YouTubers is real, she does seem like the type who needs to be on a leash, and what she said about her streaming career came off as genuine, even though she kind of cut herself off.
Maybe she's just trying to tell us that iDubbbz won't put her on a leash in like a sexy way, you know? I don't know.
Furthermore, this explanation does nothing to convince people that Anisa isn't a manipulative or spiteful person. In fact, she's admitting to—
I don't think that she's manipulative. I think that she's just fucking coping. I think that she like fucking seething over here.
To manipulation and bragging about it.
It feels good to know that like at least I have that type of staying power, but it is interesting. I really did. It's kind of like when you go fishing and you go to a new lake and you're like, I'm just gonna like throw out like I don't know, a grasshopper that I found on the ground and just a big old trout.
I think this is their biggest problem overall. If iDubbbz now holds himself to this impossible standard of always worrying about any negative impact his content may have, and both he and Anisa agree that that's the right thing to do, why doesn't Anisa concern herself with the impact of her content? Why does iDubbbz cheer on her hostile, provocative, and deceptive behavior?
And it has like the caption, iDubbbz wife or girlfriend, whatever it said, rages against the... Triggered. Yeah, right. They use the word triggered. Against the commentary community. It really made you look, in my opinion, like very confident and very with it and real.
Yeah.
I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I scurried upstairs. I had like read some of the comments and I was like, this shit's awesome. And once I saw the full thing, I was like, that's good.
Yeah.
But she's doing the thing that iDubbbz hates Sam Hyde for. She's, as Ian would say, irony poisoning, blurring the line between sincerity and irony by saying that her meltdown was meant to be a stunt of sorts. She's using other people for content, hoping that they'll fall for the trap of taking her rant seriously.
I don't believe any of that. Again, I think it's a fucking cope. How do I get back? I think it's this.
And make themselves look stupid in the process. I don't believe that was truly her intent. I think she was desperately trying to dismiss her own lunacy as cunning, but that's how she's characterizing herself, and that's the behavior iDubbbz is encouraging. Anisa is desperately seeking attention, and she's willing to settle for negative negative attention because it's easier to act like a quirky, unlikable spaz than it is to be a charismatic entertainer. It makes sense that the label Puppet Master stuck to both iDubbbz and Anisa. I'm not sure if they realize just how much mental gymnastics it's been taking to continue to see themselves as blameless. Out of the blue, Dane has this realization about their career paths.
I just had a realization. Can I just interject real quick with a realization I had? Because you just talked
Who the fuck is this guy anyway? Why'd they pick him specifically?
at length about your journey of like ditching the iDubbbz character and becoming more Ian, and people kind of being taken aback by that and reacting to it and being like, this is weird, I don't like this. Anisa is having like the opposite experience. She's like been acting normal for so long that when she tapped into her Rainbow Kids alter ego, everybody was like taken aback by it and be like, what the
fuck is Rainbow Kids?
What's going on? She's freaking out.
Is this all they talk about their podcast? I mean, it seems like it. What the fuck?
Oh, they're not familiar with the lore. I just think it's interesting that you two are having like opposite experiences where like you're trying out either an authentic, or inauthentic thing, and people are reacting negatively to it.
That's so interesting of you to say, because that's true.
While I don't agree that Anisa has been normal for so long, what Dane said is insightful. Ian's going down one path where any and all provocation or risk is to be avoided like the plague. Anisa, on the other hand, is ramping up the performative, misleading, clout-hungry side of her. They're both going in opposite, incompatible, dead-end directions. iDubbbz is in a strange position where it wasn't a single event or action that got him cancelled or made people turn on him. It's been a years-long process of being defiant towards his fanbase to make some kind of moral point, only for his wife to come to the complete opposite conclusion about her online presence. He attributes the hate Anisa gets to his older, edgier content when she's the reason why she gets hate. They usually dismiss criticism through strawman arguments or insults, only annoying the public further. There used to be some level of mystery behind who iDubbbz was. Now he's desperately trying to convince people that his life and relationship are normal by making a podcast called She Ruined My Career. They want to have more control over their image than they do, and the way they go about addressing things usually makes their situation worse. They refuse to let the chips fall where they may, making a pathetic spectacle of themselves instead. Ian's career is not beyond saving, although if he truly was capable of doing so, something tells me he would have started to turn things around by now. The future of iDubbbz is as—
I think that he can turn it around. His wife can too. She's not like that bad. It's just that they keep doing drama. They keep involving themselves in drama stuff instead of just kind of like moving on to something else. Make other contents. Like I don't think that they should have a podcast that's like, LOL, look at us. Like, look at all the controversy we've been in, which seems to be a fairly large focus. If the most interesting thing about you is when people talk negatively about you, you might want to reconsider your options here. You know, it doesn't really make any sense to me.
As murky as it gets. I'm aware of the ways social media influences us, not just the headlines and the content, but as a mode of communication in general. The layer of detachment the internet provides can lead to people being more hostile. While it doesn't feel good to have people dislike you or criticize you, that's just the nature of the internet. We can't expect everyone to like us, and we can't expect others to behave a certain way, especially in today's world. Every job has some downsides. It comes with the territory and ought to be treated as such. You can't count on a social environment to change to your liking. Here are the things that I think iDubbbz could do to help save his career. You know, other than telling him to ditch Anisa. If I were in his position, that's what I would do, but I can't expect him to divorce his wife just because people on the
his husband, excuse me,
internet say he should. Anyway, here's my advice. Establish work boundaries between himself—
Sorry. I'm probably being a little too mean about that. I'm still just fucking shocked that he took his wife's last name. I just think that's fucking crazy, you know?
And Anisa. The way they're currently making content together is dysfunctional and damaging both of their images. If Anisa wants to make her brand about getting negative attention in shallow ways, she's free to do so. But her self-destructive behavior shouldn't come at the cost of Ian's reputation. The more they can distance their brands from each other, the better. Take some time to reflect on how people perceive his more recent content. It seems like he may have started this process because he finally admitted that he sees the change in tone and energy with his content. This happened after he collaborated with his old friends at Cold Ones and he saw the comments saying things were off. It's more than just a tonal issue though. It's a refusal to look at the other reasons why people stopped watching him. And no, it's not because he stopped saying the N-word. He should also sit down and force himself to watch a marathon of his more recent content, especially She Ruined My Career. Something tells me he hasn't been quality checking his videos for the past few years. After some honest reflection and taking criticism seriously, he should shift his focus away from the criticism. He's been dwelling on these things for years without really confronting them, mentioning and addressing drama here and there without taking responsibility for anything. If and when he does reflect, there will be no reason to dwell any longer. Move on. Find an entirely new direction. If he doesn't want to make content cop again, that's completely fine, but come on, raiding Cheez-Its and making Thanos fidget toys?
Well, I mean, that direction is fine if that's where they want to go into. It doesn't seem like he's really leaning into it too much. Where the fuck do I go for this?
It's the safest, most bland, least passionate content he could have possibly made. What his new direction should be, I have no idea. That's up to Ian. But what he's currently doing is failing, and that's clear for everyone to see. As a side note, Ian would learn a lot from reading The Laws of Human Nature. iDubbbz is a very unique case of a downfall, and it's one that can still be fixed. But if he continues to defy his audience, his haters, and their criticism at every possible turn, he will continue on his never-ending spiral. He struggles with taking any helpful advice because that would require humility. He is currently choosing to define his career by the people who dislike him instead of the things he's passionate about in order to make a point. That is not empathy. It's just selfish.
Listen, you got at least 3/4 of your life to go. That's 3 more lifetimes to you. So don't blow it. Don't do drugs. If you're doing it,
I disagree. Well,
stop it. Get some help. McDonald's wants you to give yourself a chance to find out all the wonderful things you really can be. And so do I.
I'm an Adderall head now.
Okay.
True.
Incredible. All right. Well, that video was fine. I think that at the end of the day, I think iDubbbz and Anisa just need to fucking stop. Stop playing into like controversy stuff. That seems to be like the fundamental issue. So, Pogger.